Welcome everyone. Let's do a sound check. Make sure you're hearing me. We'll be good to go. All right, so we're good to go. Welcome everyone. Hey, special shout out to all the haters, the lovers, and they just don't know what else to do because ain't nothing on this damn TV. All right, welcome everyone. Hey, I'm gonna come around, tell everybody hi, and we'll be diving in. Tonight's show should be very interesting to you all. We're going to do something that no one has done. Okay. We're going to dive deep into the entire debacle regarding the attempts to remove Richard Allen's defense team in the past 2 years. So we'll be getting into that. You guys, like I said, you don't always have to watch. I will be putting things on the screen. I have 10 documents lined up for you that we need to read through, and you don't need to read them. I just throw them on the screen so you know I'm not lying to you. Anyway, we'll be reading through documents, and we will be so if you happen to be driving or jogging or doing anything, cooking dinner, you don't have to read along with me. Just put the earbuds in and go ahead and listen. So God bless you all. Thank you so much for being here, and let me get started. I'm going to back it way up and see who was in here super early. Tonight's show is called DELPHI, Revisiting the Judge's Attempt to Remove Richard Allen's Defense Team. All right, so we got Amy in the house with the support pathways. Y'all holla. Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much. Everybody, hit up the support pathways if you want to support what I do and this channel. I do appreciate you all. We got a lot to talk about this week. Trust me, it's going to be an action-packed week. There's a lot going on that you don't know about yet, but we'll be talking about it in the next 3 days. What's up? Miss K is here. Plain Iron is here. Mark Ellis, Lisa Auten. Welcome in, Lisa. Brenda Mays. Okay, Deb. We got Plain Iron. Okay, Sweet Do Shibby. What's up, Sweet Do Shibby? All right, also, who else is in here early? You guys were super early. All right. David Rogers, what's up, sir? And Plain Iron, Nancy Drew 101, back for another one. All right, Mandy Gilliand. What's up, Mandy? All right, Fur Baby Daddy, hello to you. Dirty Diana, are you clean? Dirty Diana. In what way are you dirty, Diana? KP, hello to you. All right. Everyone's up in here. All right, KP. Amy Dunn. All right. It's a new day. Gifted 5 memberships. Wow. Thank you. Let's see who got them. Can I go and figure out who got 5 memberships? No? Is it too late? That was a bit earlier. Well, apologize. I can't call you out, but whoever got the memberships, I'm glad for you. I'm glad you got the memberships. We will be doing a members only project soon. You're going to love that one too. All right. So let's see. We got It's a New Day. Yeah. Tammy Martin. Hello, Tammy Martin. Angie Gibson says she's like number 20. That reminds us, please hit the like. Hey, please hit the like. Everyone who wants to hit the like, go hit the like. If you don't want to hit it, don't hit it. All right. Thumbs up, y'all. All right. What's up? It's a New Day. Thank you for the memberships and thank you for being here. And thank you for your channel. Everyone go subscribe to It's a New Day. She does good stuff and you want to know about it. All right. Tiffany Renee Rocks. Welcome, Tiffany. Rebecca Ann, 1965. Subscribe to her channel. You want to know about it too. Trust me. She goes after Randy. Mark Ellis, $200 super chat. Buy more candy, take little profit on me. Oh man, come on. How about if I take little profit on you multiple times? Thank you. I'm not gonna do the candy because honestly, you know what's been getting me? The Tony's chocolate. Question out there. Who's been victimized by Tony's chocolate? Damn. I think I've developed a new addiction. Thank you so much, Mark. Serious question. Serious question. No one? No one? Well, you owe it to yourself, candy lovers. It's the Tony's chocolate, okay? The Tony's chocolate. Trust me. Trust me. It's a $7, $6 bar. It's worth every penny. All right. So I should get a sponsorship. What if someone emailed Tony's for me? Give Prof free chocolate. What's up, Nancy Drew, Amy Dunn, Rebecca Ann, Sweet Dude Chibi, Niobe. Hey, Niobe. You guys back at it again. 4 pit bulls across America. Okay. Heavy Metal Rehab. Hey, where you been, Bay? I was worried about you last stream. Now I'm worried about Heavy. All right. Let's see. Court of Public Opinion. Hello to you. Who else is here? Who else is here? Let's see. Lisa, I'm just so glad you made it and found the channel. She says it's my first live. So glad you found the channel and welcome. All right. All right. Mino Dino's back in the house. What's up, Mino Dino? Okay, hello to you. I almost missed you, but I didn't. Okay. Who else we got early in the show? You hear a little Prof singing in the next room? He's singing, really. Please tell me you hear that. Goddess, welcome. And Crystal Blue Persuasion, welcome to you. Welcome to you. All right, David Rogers. Lori Naran back in the house. Hello to you. And also Mr. Gene Jackson. Welcome back in. Okay, Mr. Dom S., welcome back in. Also, Indiana Nan, what's up? Oh, Gloria Starrett, welcome to you. Hello to you. You are early. We haven't even began yet. We're just greeting everyone. Asha Harry, hello to you. Hey, you guys do me a favor. Go to Rick Snae's channel and just tell him hi, okay? Rick Snae's been really, really busy, so he's not doing many lives. But go to Rick's channel and just say hi to him in the comments or something. Let him know you love him. All right. You made me think of that for some reason. Okay. Kelly, hey, Kelly. Welcome on in. All right. Mary Martin, welcome to you. All right. Fur Baby Daddy. It's a new day. Lisa, Indiana, Dom, Mino, Heavy Metal. Oh, there you go. Trial Junkie. Welcome to you, Trial Junkie. Hey, Birdie81 is coming in. Birdie81. All right. Dieter's just in, just listening. Having trouble with my eyes. Well, that's why I'm going to read through this for you. Trust me. This show tonight will be a gift for all of you who are resting your eyes, because I'm going to do a lot of reading, unfortunately. What's up, Gretchen Allen? Matthew Greco, welcome in, welcome in. Good to see you. All right. Heavy Metal, I did. Actually, send me another one tonight. All right. Karen Manley says, good evening. Looking forward to this one. I think gold needs to be investigated. This one will be a good one. Okay. Promise. What's up? No name. Okay. All right. Who else is up in here? Who was Kevin, Karen, Lisa, Shibby, Mino, Heavy Metal, Trial Junkie, Pinky and the Brain. Welcome to membership. Welcome. Join the membership and welcome to the membership. Carol, welcome to you. All right. Boom. Your mama Nim, welcome. I like that name a lot. What's up, your mama Nim? You showed up late but watched after. Sergio is brilliant. Yes, I agree. That was amazing, wasn't it? What's up, artist formerly known? Also a brilliant individual. Please go subscribe to her. Good evening to you, artist. Maybe we should talk. Miss Pie Crust, welcome to you. Come on in. All right. Whole damn crew. Yeah, it's hard to catch up, but look, we got 124 in here. So invite your friends. Let's get 224, and then 324, and maybe we'll get to 424. All right, all the good ones. What's up, Stephanie? Welcome to you, Jonathan Smith. Hello, welcome to you. All right. This channel is bitchin' text, yellow gold, text, yellow gold, text, yellow gold. I think the software didn't understand your emojis. All right, boom. All right, you guys are up in here. Thank you so much. Say What, welcome to you. How you feeling too? Everyone pray for Say What. I know she hasn't been feeling well, but she's here. So damn, you guys are something else. Emerald Wonderland, hello to you too. All right, you're back in here. Now I know who you are. All right, so I think we got everyone. Yeah, Shibby and Mino Dino, don't scare off the new guests. Look, you guys, Shibby and Mino Dino are a little awkward. They're a little different, but you'll love them soon enough. All right. You see what I mean? You can't bring this thing anywhere. Pinky and the Brain, hello to you. Hello to you, Pinky and the Brain. All right. Well, geez, y'all. That was about everybody, I think, in here. Make sure Ullery is here. Zach Ullery. Welcome to you, Z Ullery. Okay. And whoever's texting me, stop texting. Why is it not muted? Okay. Oh, let's see what else we got here. Laura says, aren't we all a little awkward? Okay. Oh, let me see what we got here. There's a Peter Dragons. Maybe you're in the small channel, sir. Oh, I'm having an issue. Hold on. I need to go check the small channel and see what's happening in there. There's 6 people in there. What's my is the backup channel dying? That's why you're look, Peter Dragons. We're over in the big channel. It's called the Prof. You're up in the backup channel, so you're only seeing 3 other people. Nevertheless, I'm glad you're here. Backup channel seems to be dying. Okay. All right. Bonnie, welcome, Bonnie. They are different, all right, but we don't know what we do without them. All right. David Rogers says $5 super chat. Great chat group. Great chat group, I think he means. Great chat. Great chat. Thank you for the $5 super chat or sticker or whatever the hell that is. Okay. No one text me. Hey, we hope you feel better. Say what? We hope you feel better. We're going to pray for you too. Okay. Where is Hebby? I don't know. Hopefully she's resting. All right, y'all. I think I've got caught up. Well, if you blocked on the other channel, you need to tell me your actual name. Okay. Because if I blocked you on purpose. So maybe before you sneak in an alt account, tell me why you're blocked. That would be nice. You guys need to learn some etiquette rules. Look, if you get blocked in a channel, don't make a fake account and sneak back in. How about just buy the hint? Okay, take the hint and maybe make amends. Apologize for what you did wrong if you did something wrong. Or if I threw a temper tantrum, then let me apologize. Okay. All right. Yeah. Social etiquette. Don't sneak in and be awkward under a fake account. What's up, Asha Harry? Backup channels for replay. What's up, Nobody Nothing? What's up? All right. See, Indiana's doing it the right way. She hit like on the backup channel as well. Yeah, we're praying for Heather. We need to pray for Heather. All right. So, wow, just give me a moment. You don't think we ever had a problem? Well, what was your name that you're blocked under? All right. Let's see. Shibby and Dean are like the weird uncle the family never speaks. All right, y'all. Oh, I see. I see. I remember Brandola girl. You've been hidden for a while. Where'd you go? Okay, you're not banned. You're not banned. Okay, you're not banned, Brandola girl. Somebody stop texting. What the hell? How do I make it stop? All right. Now, I think that's everyone, okay? I think that's everyone. Yeah, I told you Jim's not blocked. I don't understand what the problem is. All right. So here's the deal. My it just won't stop, will it? It just won't stop. Okay. Now what am I saying? Let me remove this. What's up, K Miri? Okay, you're coming in. Everyone else who comes in, thank you for coming in. Okay, now let me talk. Let's see. So, listen, guys, we're in the middle of a very complicated situation. And listen, I understand that some people won't understand what's going on due to a lack of information. And I understand that some of you also have pre-existing allegiances or internet friends who you don't understand how to fairly or accurately judge. And so we're in the midst of a sort of like when the family's breaking up because of a divorce or something, and all the kids, they don't understand what's going on in mom and dad, and then the cousins, and then they're breaking up, and then now is this a step or is this a, you know, there's a lot of problems, okay? And listen, I'm not going to shy away from any fucking problems. I'm not. I came into this and I dove head first because I wanted to. And when I did that, all I got in return was harassment, doxing, stalking, death threats. See what I mean? And so the problem here is that been there, done that. And that's not going to run me off this time. So you might ask yourself, wow, why are we seeing people from the same side go at each other? Why are we seeing people behave like the troll farm with Prof? Well, there's a fucking reason, okay? Because I'm telling the truth about their bad actions, and they don't want that told. And we've only cracked the door. That's what I mean, okay? That's what I mean. In the coming days and weeks, you will be learning more. And like I said a week and a month ago, hold on to your seats, strap in, and get ready for a wild ride, because you don't understand the levels of fuckery that people have gone to in trying to interfere in this case, but you will. So I found it amazing tonight to hear someone literally say, well, you know, someone's have built their channels around Delphi. So, you know, so when there's nothing going on, they have to start drama because, you know, they have to keep engagement. No, bitch. I understand your talking points, and this is not about drama, okay? I'm coming at you because you deserve it. And I told the truth, and you didn't. And you still haven't. And so, therefore, I'm going to keep telling the truth, and you're going to keep being upset. And all you ever had to do was tell the truth. Isn't that easy? So you want war, you got war. And for all of you innocent victims out there of watching the shit show, I apologize you have to see this. No one wants you all to have to go through all of this drama, but you'll have to get through it. And let's be honest here. People don't like it when you open their closets and shine the lights in there. And it's happening. And more will happen, because when you hear some of the things you're going to be hearing, and when you see some of the things you're going to be seeing, you'll understand. Anyhow, that's not the point of the show tonight. Our pre-planned show for tonight was centered around the judges' failed attempts, 2 of them, to remove Baldwin and Rozzi from this case. And let me just say something. Baldwin and Rozzi are good guys. I stand by Baldwin and Rozzi and Jennifer Auger. I'm not going to throw them under the bus. I'm not going to berate them. I've said they made huge mistakes, and I stand by those statements. Yes, they've made mistakes, but hey, who hasn't? Who in the hell could come into Delphi and within 2 years litigate an entire case and defend your client in the Delphi murders when they didn't, their heads were totally up their asses. They didn't know shit about Delphi. You know, in addition to that, they had people bending their ear, leading them in the wrong direction. You understand that? First of all, they didn't know shit about Delphi. Secondly, think about this. All the discovery had been deleted, compromised, sanitized, as I called it. So they didn't have anything worthwhile in discovery. They didn't know the case. They don't know the locals. And furthermore, they had people pulling their ears in the wrong direction. Therefore, they fucked the case entirely. They also arrested a week early for no apparent reason, and a reason that still has not been properly explained, because I don't believe the bullshit excuse they gave on the mainstream media interviews. So I'd still like to know why they rested early, because they didn't tell the truth on those interviews. Now, furthermore, like I said, this case has been interfered with. So I've made it very well known. I stand completely by Kathy Allen because she's a victim in all this. And I stand completely by Andrew Baldwin, Bradley Rossi, and Jennifer Auger, the defense team that was representing Richard Allen. And at this point in time, I'm standing firmly behind Mark Lehman and Stacey Uliana. Additionally, because they are now the appellate attorneys on this case. So, is my position made clear enough for you now? All right. And let me furthermore say that the reason I stand behind all of these individuals is because I completely respect them. Is that clear enough? There you go. Cheers. So tonight what we're going to do is get away from that particular conversation, and we're going to dive in to something extremely important that you all need to know about. Now, this is not a light topic, I must say. To be honest with you, you all know that Delphi is not a light topic. I mean, if it, after all, is appears to be a gang murder with ritualistic overtones of two little girls who were offered up by their families, being covered up by the entire Masonic law enforcement structure of Indiana and the families. I mean, it's not a light topic. It's actually heavy. And in addition to all of that, there have been several deaths that have followed behind this case. We've discussed many of them. So it's a lot. It's a lot. But I need to bring you down a journey in your memory, because you will remember that in September of 2023, these attorneys dropped a nuclear bomb on the Delphi murders case. And that was the Frank's memorandum, affectionately referred to as 136 pages. And keep in mind that we don't have all the exhibits that were attached to that, which is also kind of odd. And I would love to have them if anyone who wants to leak information wants to email it directly to me. Now, it's pretty interesting because subsequent to that Frank's memorandum dropping, an entire shitstorm developed in Delphi. Okay? This shitstorm included an absolute frenzy of those bad actors who like to run people off the case. They proceeded in terrorizing many of the defense-friendly YouTubers, with the exception of one particular group. Don't you find that odd? They actually did run a couple off. Not only that, there was very shortly after a suicide. By someone tied to leaks and to these bad actors behind the scenes. Now, it's funny because you have to put yourself in Andrew Baldwin's shoes. Now, if he indeed leaked information that led to the death of a gentleman with a child and a wife and an extended family, and it nearly got him kicked off the case, in a huge shitload of trouble in his state, you would think that he would be pretty reticent to participate in any more leaking, right? I mean, that leaking did end up in the death of an individual, a father, a veteran. So there's all of that. And it's funny now that there be a group of people shit. We'll get to that later. You see, ain't nobody should be leaking nothing on this case. But we're going to go back on a journey because I want you to remember that at the time of those leaks, I said, everybody's lying. No one's taking accountability. And I put up a list that was blank. And I said, everyone who received those photos, put your name on a list. How many people put their names on the list? How many? Zero. That's the spineless bastards we're dealing with. Time passes. I figure the story out. I start telling the story. No one else tells the truth. A year passes. One person comes out and tells a little of the truth, not even the whole truth. Then I say, I'm going to have to put some people's feet to the fire. So I make a phone call and I say, I need the receipts. Show me the money. And that person shows me the money and tells me a little truth. Then I call Rick Snay and I confront him and I say, tell me the fucking truth. And he says, I don't know. I can't remember. I don't know. Take some time. I compared things, talked to him several times, and I realized he's not lying. He literally doesn't know because his life's been turned inside out. But he tells me the truth. And I say, Jesus, how is it that out of 50 fucking YouTubers, I can't get but one or two to tell me the truth about those leaks? And now you got people who want to leak some more because they feel entitled to. And the story still hasn't been told about those leaks. We got a dead guy, and then we got a couple more now. Anyway, enough of all that. As a result of all that, Judge Gold decided she's going to overstep her authority. As is standard practice in her courtroom. And she's going to go outside of bounds and kick these attorneys off the case. And the way she does it is real sinister. And that's where we start tonight. Okay? This is the transcript of the in-camera proceedings on October 19, 2023. I know that many of you probably have not seen this at all or heard it. Keep in mind, the recording's never been released. You haven't heard it yourself. But maybe you need to hear a little of what actually transpired that day. And let me remind you, what she did was very, 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 very sneaky. Let me ask you this: when was the one and only time that a camera was allowed in her courtroom on this Delphi murders case? I thought so. All right. So we'll try to get through some of this. All right. Oh, Heather came in. Hey, Heather. Hello, Miss Heather. Hope you're feeling good and glad you came in. Damn, did I miss you? Also, Bex came in. Hello, Swade Smith came in. Hello, Steve Johnson came in. Tony Hunt. Love Goldberg. Okay, God bless you all who's coming in. I'm so glad to see you. Pert in it. Okay, everyone coming in. Glad to see you. I was doing a little talk, but I'm so glad you all came in. Okay. Yes, exactly. She wanted to embarrass them and use it as a tool to coerce them. Okay. But I want us to look at this because this right here is very, it's important that you understand what happened behind the scenes. Okay. It's important. And like I said, I'll read it to you because some of you don't need to read and it's tiny anyway. It's not good for your eyes to strain them. Okay. So I'll read this for you. And you'll understand what happened that day. And that's how we're going to get started tonight. So 37 minutes in, we're just getting started. So apologize for that, but it is what it is. Okay. This says, McClellan comes in. He says, blah, blah, blah. I want to introduce you to Luttrell, a retired prosecutor. He's coming on board, blah, blah, blah. That was a whole other side hustle we'll talk about later. All right. It says, well, I'm the one that kind of asked. This is Brad Rossi. I'm the one that kind of asked to huddle up. So if you want me to lead or if you want to say some things, I'm okay with whatever approach you want to take here, Judge. And she says, go ahead. Jody's got our portable recorder going. So we've got a record. And he says, I'm happy to hear you're going to make some pleadings or some decisions on the pleadings today. And I assume Andy feels the same way. It's time to kind of get some closure, if you will, with regard to those items so that we can move forward. It's probably obvious that the tension from our side is coming, from the words disqualification that were murmured in phone conference that we had a couple weeks ago. I'm assuming you understand how that kind of raises the intensity level of the circumstances. And I guess if I have a concern today, it's that, we're going to go out on kind of in the public, so to speak, in the courtroom on the record and have a discussion about an ongoing investigation. And that's what I gathered from the email. I think you invited Nick to talk about that if he wanted to. And, it makes me a little uncomfortable because I don't know. First of all, there are no pleadings that are pending, whether they're motions to disqualify or contempt citations or whatever that might be. That really frame many of the issues. And I have no problem. I don't have any problem talking about this stuff privately on the record, in an ex parte type of confidential hearing. I just think it's a little difficult to expect that there will be any kind of structure to the idea of, hey, there's going to be an ongoing investigation and just tell us what's going on. And I don't know that it has any relevance to what we're really here to accomplish today. And I also don't know why Nick would want to talk about an ongoing investigation in the public, knowing that that in itself could be a little damaging to their circumstances. And so we're lawyers. We're used to having issues framed. We're used to having an opportunity to prepare. And I don't have anything to hide. And I know he doesn't either. He doesn't have anything to hide. Maybe you've gathered that we've cooperated. We ran into the state police post, our respective posts, if you will, and I had somebody advise me of my rights, and I waived those, and I gave a formal statement. He did the same. And I'm not sure that we're going to benefit or that this will be productive just on the open floor like this. And that's my biggest concern. And remember, y'all, these cameras, she's holding over their shoulders. She's got these cameras in that courtroom just for this reason. You get it? And here comes Mr. Baldwin, who says, I'm more of the due process side. I'm not sure what will happen, but I just don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, and I would like the opportunity to know what's going to happen and prepare for what they're claiming or whatever before it happens. And I feel like, no, I don't feel like, I don't want to say ambushed, but it's just hard, for me to know what to do when I don't know what's happening. There's not a pleading we can respond to, things like that. So, you had indicated when Nick said, well, I don't know if he said the word disqualification. Oh, he did. Was it the word? Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't know if he just said it in a more generic way. And your response was, I'm leaning in that direction or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. Says Judge Gull. And so that's, a cause of concern. I mean, we're still wanting to try this case in January. And I'm willing, we have made changes at my office that will prevent this from ever happening again. And we can take directives from the court. We can, we're locking down every single thing on DELPHI. It's in a dedicated room. We put locks on our conference room in the war room where this guy went, my friend. He went in and did this without my knowledge. And no document, whether it's benign or something super, like a crime scene photo, is ever going to be left alone for a single solitary second ever again. So, I'm hoping that can be something that the court can say, all right, that's fine. And then let's get on with the trial. But I'll shut up now. The court, anything, Nick? McClellan says, Judge, I guess my plan today was to give the court a summary of the investigation. I've got witnesses here and exhibits to present that go towards the investigation. I'm more happy to hand those over to the defense. I know it may harm the investigation, but I think it would be important that the court hear those things. I guess the heart of it is investigation. I think it's important. I think the importance of you hearing it is outweighed by that. And so I have those things. I'm concerned that the leak is not just a one-time leak. The evidence that we have shows it's an ongoing leak. However, it's being done, and it's just, what next? That's the issue I have. What's next? And I mean, I spent the past 17 days investigating this night and day when I should have been focusing on preparing for trial. And so When I say night and day, I mean phone calls at 2 a.m., 3:30 a.m., night and day. And so that's where I'm at, Judge. Again, I'm an officer of the court. I'm reporting to the court what I know, and that's where I see my role. Okay. And Mr. Razi says, this is starting to scream due process for me. Now, you guys really need to retain this shit because we're going to be in for it. But retain what's being said now, so when you hear that Supreme Court decision, it'll all come together for you. Okay. And you'll see who was right, who was wrong. But Razi says, this is starting to scream due process for me. I haven't seen any of these exhibits, and I don't really know, frankly, anything about any of this. And I'm not distancing myself from Mr. Baldwin. I'm just saying I have no connection with any of these people, okay? And the idea that somehow the prosecutor is going to get to roll out a bunch of statements and exhibits and testimony without us having any forewarning or any idea, any way of scrutinizing it, seems a little outside the boundaries of due process to me. Plus, again, I get back to what is the relevance to what is going on in this case? Why are we going to use an open courtroom to air an ancillary matter? With cameras, by the way. It's not really connected in any way at this point to the proceedings that are ongoing, whether it's the Franks issue or anything of that nature. And I will tell you this, I am prepared to show the court this. I would rather do it in private. This problem has been a problem from the very beginning. I have 10 pages of a deposition transcript in this file from my deposition, our deposition that I took of Trooper Holman in this case. And in that deposition, he talks openly about how there were crime scene leaks from the very beginning. You guys heard that? Let me reread it. Let me reread that. I have 10 pages of a deposition transcript from my deposition of Trooper Holman. And in that deposition, he talks openly about how there were crime scene leaks from the very beginning. Unequivocal crime scene leaks. And that as soon as this crime scene occurred, they were investigating information that had been leaked, that had been released, because there were lay people that were part of the search party. And the implication is that these people that found those girls started to essentially disseminate and distribute information. And law enforcement essentially tried to catch up with them, but it was really too late, as you might expect. Once it gets in the hands of the public, it's too late. So he told us that. He almost volunteered that information to me in the deposition. You all heard that? The second concern I have is that, and I think I've shared it with the court just as an example, a week or two ago, somebody sends me a court TV bit, and I can assure you I've never watched one of those bits on this case. I don't even know if I've even ever really watched court TV. Maybe back when Simpson was ongoing. I don't know. And in that bit, Barbara McDonald is talking on 2 different occasions. She mentioned how she's getting information from investigators on the ground that were at the crime scene. Let me read it again. Barbara McDonald was talking on 2 different occasions, mentioned how she's getting information from investigators on the ground that were at the crime scene. Now, we can all draw implications about that, but most importantly, it was corroborated by the fact that she was holding in her hand documents that I know to be directly related to the Purdue professor's report. I mean, I saw the pictures. I know where those came from. And if you know, the point here is, I'm going to say this maybe a little loosely, forgive me. I don't care. I don't care that all this stuff is out there because it's been out there for 5 or 6 years. I don't have time. Mr. Baldwin doesn't have time. He doesn't have time to sit and try to marshal all this stuff while the case is ongoing because there's no end to it. But the point is, the court needs to have some context that this is nothing new. I've lost sleep over the fact that there's a man who's dead that I don't even know. And frankly, Andy doesn't know. And it's tragic. I don't know what life circumstances he had or what surrounded this. None of that information has been shared with us. But at the end of the day, what's going out there in the cyber world and in the public, as you might expect in a case of this magnitude that's been publicized for 6 years, was beyond our control before we even got involved. Let me say it again. I've lost sleep over the fact that there's a man who is dead, Robert Kyle Fortson, who I don't even know. And frankly, Andy doesn't know. And it's tragic. I don't know what life circumstances he had or what surrounded this. We don't have that information. It's not been shared with us. But at the end of the day, what's going out there in the cyber world, on the internet, and in the public, as you might expect in a case of this magnitude, one that's been publicized for 6 years, was beyond our control before we even got involved. Boom. Mr. Baldwin says, there's even a guy in Florida who says the guy in Texas, Mark Cohen, who leaked all this stuff, has received from a disgruntled Carroll County employee a whole file filled with stuff, and photos included. And I haven't seen the photos that were leaked. I don't know what they are. I mean, if this could be set for a formal hearing in the future where we have a chance to do it the right way, that's one thing. But, you know, to go in there and we don't have any way to counteract anything, if I know what it is, I can say, oh, okay, I know what that is, or I don't know what that is. And, you know, in the meantime, we can, I don't know, honestly, this is the worst, lowest point of my career right now because somebody did what they did to me. And, you know, that has nothing to do with Richard Allen. It certainly does not, says the bitch. Mr. Baldwin. Richard Allen needs to have counsel there. I just don't want to go in there and not be able to fight back if with evidence or witnesses that we have to counteract whatever they claim they have. And then Judge Gold speaks. Here are my thoughts in no particular order. I don't know how many folks are out there, and I certainly don't wish to air publicly to the world the concerns that I have about this matter. My intent in having this hearing was to go through some of the pleadings that we have not yet decided. So I was going to start with reminding everybody about the decorum order, reminding everybody why we're here, to shut up, etc. There have been reports to my sheriff about disruptive people, and I will remind people if they are disruptive, they will be removed. And my sheriff is fully prepared to execute arrests if necessary, because I know we've seen in our other hearings, people have just been disruptive and hateful. So under the rules, under the canons of judicial conduct, I'm required to advise people within the room that the media is here and they are filming. They're doing pool coverage. So there's only 2 cameras in the courtroom and everybody's going to get coverage from that. And then I want to talk about the pleadings. Defendant filed a verified motion for immediate transfer of custody. The state filed its response. The motion, again, has a lot of inaccuracies and some speculation, and it has been refuted ably, I think, by the affidavits that have been submitted by the state, and I'm going to deny the motion. The defendant then filed a motion for broadcasting order. The state filed its response. Your motion's overbroad, and it's got a lot of irrelevant verbiage in it, and I'm required to consider individual requests for hearings. So I will, if the media wishes to have an individual request submitted, they know full well how to do that, and I provided counsel with all of those requests that I've gotten so far for this hearing. So if you want to file them for particular hearings, you're certainly welcome to do that, but the media is all over this. They know how to do this. And Mr. Razi says, yeah, I was trying to understand. Are you suggesting that you're going to determine this on a case-by-case basis or a hearing-by-hearing basis? Court says hearing by hearing. Okay. I just want to make sure I understood. Gull says, the state filed its motion for leave of court to subpoena third-party records. I think that was directed again to DOC. I clearly can't grant that. I'm going to grant the defendant's motion to quash. But if you continue to raise his medical and mental health and pleadings, that's fair game then for that to be provided to the state. You also have filed, Mr. McClelland, a motion for future pleadings and the filings to be sealed prior to being released to the public. I've not gotten a response from the defense. Mr. Razi says, can I speak on that? Sure. I think it's important to note that we've had this discussion come up before, and there was basically, okay, we're done sealing stuff. We're going to make it public. Before we filed the Franks brief, I had a long conversation with court reporter Karen Allen over in Delphi because I wasn't sure about it. Allen or Roller? I always want to call her Karen. Allen. Karen Allen. Because I wasn't sure about the mechanics of how all this stuff was moving from Delphi to your office. And I know that you had set up some kind of website or something that people could access. And I was under the understanding, in speaking with Miss Allen, I'm not blaming her for anything, but that when we filed these things, they were going from them and they were hitting a button. We were filing with Carroll County, so they're hitting enter and they're sending it to you. And we're essentially filtering this stuff you were seeing before it became public. Nope, says the attitude-ridden court, Judge Gull. Mr. Razi says, and so that's the way, in talking with her, that's the way I understood the mechanics, which I think is what happened to a pleading the other day from what I understand. We filed something and you either put it in a queue. I think I tried to do some homework on that. I was part of one of those conversations and that's what she said. So does that need a hearing? I'm happy to have a hearing on that. I don't have a problem with that. Well, I guess I'm just really telling you for context. I mean, could there be a happy medium of we file it confidentially and then so the judge then gets a chance to review it first? Because that's what I thought we were going on anyway. But if that's not what's going on, no, it's being filed confidentially if you mark it as such. I know that now. I've had my staff mark the memorandum confidential after it had been filed and disseminated to the public because the actual warrant was in there. And that's covered under the miscellaneous cause number, under a miscellaneous cause number. Well, what is your ruling? I guess I have to make sure I understand. I don't want to fight about something that we don't need to argue about. I haven't ruled on that. Okay. You haven't filed a response in that. My question is, do we need a hearing on that or do you wish to file a response? The Franks motion clearly needs a ruling and I'm working on that. The motion and exhibits are about 1,500 pages. Let me stop there for all of you because you're my people out here. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, that we've constantly referred to the Franks memorandum It's 136 pages. But we don't have any of the exhibits, any of the related information that is attached to that memorandum. Yeah. Well, is it shocking to hear that the complete page count of that collection is approximately 1,500 pages? The motion, the Frank's motion and exhibits are about 1,500 pages. And there are hours and hours of interviews that have been made available that my IT staff has now cleared to make sure they're okay. We've already talked about that. And I mean, that brings us to my concerns that I had raised with all of you on our phone call. And I write everything out. And this is what I intend to say in open court. Okay, you guys listen up now. You guys listen up. Because this right here is where the coercion or blackmail comes into play. This was going to be her statement in open court. In front of the cameras, the one time they were allowed. Understand what I'm saying here. Let me bring myself up here. Understand what I'm saying, because this is not ambiguous. Okay. I have concerns regarding the defense team and the totality of the circumstances surrounding your representation of Mr. Allen. Candidly, my concerns began at our hearing on November 22nd of last year. Mr. McClellan filed a motion for a gag order, and we were in chambers, and you assured me, gentlemen, quote, "We don't want the media in our lives. We will not try this case in the media," close quotation. And less than 2 weeks later, you issued an undated press release that contained an awful lot of information that would not normally be revealed. Remember, this is all in front of the cameras. This was a threat. I don't know. I think you knew or should have known that those were potentially violative of Rule 3.6 of the Rules of Professional Responsibility. But it is that press release that prompted me to issue the order of December 2nd, granting the gag order until further notice. April 18th of this year, you filed a notice of tort claim against the Department of Correction. You stated in that notice that it was your intent to pursue, quote, "Our client's claims against you. The full amount of damages sought on behalf of my client is unknown," close quotation. I don't know how you could do that in representing Mr. Allen in a criminal matter and then launch off into a civil matter. I think that's inappropriate. All of you mean girls, listen. Hit rewind, figure out what I'm saying. All right. May of this year, you were notified by the state of the Brandon Woodhouse arrest and the subsequent discovery of your work product. And I think it was an outline that you created for yourselves with the discovery. It was pretty detailed. I don't know if that's the right word. That apparently happened in December of last year. And that was not revealed to anybody, not shared with the court. It wasn't shared with you, although apparently you guys knew about what was going on. So then Mr. Woodhouse gets arrested, and here we are. Grossly negligent to email that to the wrong Brad. Your pleadings on the safekeeping order contain inaccuracies and falsehoods. Ooh. That was proven in the hearing we conducted in June. The evidence presented by the state clearly demonstrated the falsity of your claims, and that was very troubling to me. And then the last couple of weeks that we have been dealing with, the state provided you discovery. That has been severely compromised. We now have an ongoing investigation. I'm not going to call it a criminal investigation. I don't know what it is, but it's clearly being investigated by the state of Indiana. Everyone involved has sought counsel, including you, Mr. Baldwin. You've had an attorney enter a written appearance this morning. I don't want to get into the investigation candidly. You are the constitutional authority for the state of Indiana. If you choose to pursue it, that is up to you. If you choose to abandon it, that is clearly up to you. I'm glad to hear that you have cooperated, but Mr. Baldwin's attorney clearly shared, I don't know if you've seen this pleading. I've seen it, Judge. It's kind of late. He emailed it to us. Well, yeah, so he clearly shared it in his pleading, down to the fact that an individual has committed suicide. He included the fact that you left materials all over the conference room table, accessible to anyone. And this is a friend of yours who apparently you have consulted with on this case. So again, it's up to you if you wish to pursue that. I'm looking at the totality of the circumstances. You know, when I look at the suppression, this case law requires me to look at the totality of circumstances. And that's what I'm doing. And it pains me to say this, but the totality of these circumstances demonstrates gross negligence and incompetence on the part of the defense team. I am unsatisfied with your representation of Mr. Allen, and I am gravely concerned about his right to have competent, non-negligent representation. He doesn't have that right now because what you have demonstrated is negligence and incompetence. Now I am sharing my thoughts with you privately. I don't want to say this in open court. Here's a coercion. I would encourage you to talk privately about what you wish to do. I don't want this coming out. It's not where we need to be with this case, but I will. That's the threat. That's the threat. But you don't know that. You've just been now made aware of my concerns and where I'm landing. So if you wish to hire to have a private conversation, I would encourage you to do that. I don't believe your client is here yet. Clearly, you need to speak with him as well. See, that's the threat. That was the threat. Yeah. Be mad. Be mad. That was the threat. And like I said, clearly it was unsubstantiated because the Supreme Court did not agree with that. But let's continue. Baldwin says, I'm not good at reading between the lines. See, this is why Baldwin is genius. Let me tell you this. Baldwin knew that this recorder was going and that this transcript was in the making. So what Baldwin wanted to do was to get her even further documented. You understand? Baldwin's smart. He's a genius. But she's playing slick here. So she says, you're a lawyer. That's what you do for a living. Baldwin says, when you say have a private conversation, are you talking to the four of us? I'm talking about you. I'm not accusing the state of gross incompetence and negligence. I am finding gross incompetence and negligence with you. Okay. So Razi steps in. He says, forgive me, please. I mean, obviously, reading the tea leaves here, what you're giving us a chance to do is bow out gracefully, if you will, if that's the right term. Is there a scenario where the court would accept if I stayed on the case? I mean, I'm a team player, and I'm not the kind of guy that just bails out on someone for the sake of doing it. But I think it's obvious that, you know, he can speak differently, but I'm not as connected to, the most recent circumstances as he is. Mr. Allen is in a situation where he's going to have counsel. If he has new counsel, it's going to take them a year to get up to speed with the depth of information that continues to come in. And so I think that it's his Sixth Amendment, that his Sixth Amendment rights matter. And, I'm probably the one that can at least move this thing forward with some sense of judicial economy. I don't like it, and that's not what I intended to do when I came in here today. But that would be the kind of worst case scenario on our side, I guess. So is that an option that the court would entertain? And she says no. So basically what you're saying is you guys either quit on your own accord or you make me fire you? No, I'm saying to you that this is what I plan to say in court on the record when we convene at 2:00 in front of the cameras. Well, so is a culmination of that you're removing us from the case? I will. In front of the cameras. Based on what I've just shared with you. In front of the cameras. Oh, well, I just want to make sure, and I'm just giving you the opportunity to have a conversation. How do you want that to go? I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this, but I will if I have to, she says. How should we bow out gracefully, as Brad says? Would we even have a hearing? How would that go? Because if we're out of the case, then you're going to go ahead and rule on a bunch of stuff without lawyers in the room? No, I would not do that. If you decide that your best course of action is to file a motion to withdraw, you can do that today. And I'll send Mr. Allen back to the DOC after you've had a chance to speak with him. Would that happen before the hearing or after the hearing? Your motion to withdraw would happen before the hearing. Okay. Because he has rights, and I don't want those rights compromised by having a hearing with him not having counsel. I assume if you choose to withdraw, that his financial situation hasn't changed and he would still be entitled to court-appointed counsel. I can't imagine that he has the ability at this point to hire counsel. Baldwin says, Brad and I need to talk. Yes, you do. Thank you, gentlemen, says the mean-ass cunt. All right. And Razi says, so obviously we're kind of trying to figure out how to address the issue with very short notice, very little notice. First thing that we did is really talk to the client. Our client is a big part of this, the biggest part of this, and he has communicated to us that he does not want us to withdraw from this case. He wants us to continue with his representation. He understands that he's not the gatekeeper. He doesn't have the authority to really force the court to do that. He would like to say that on the record. We asked him if that's what he wanted to do. We suggested maybe he would do it in chambers. It seems a little bit of a difficult position to put a man who's accused but not been found guilty, to put him in a courtroom and, have him speak in the circumstance with 15 minutes notice. I'm going to speak for myself and let Andy speak for himself. I'm going to file a motion to withdraw. I don't want to do it, but I don't think that I have a choice at this point. The options I've been given without any notice by the court really are either I withdraw or I'm going to be publicly shamed. And that's the way I see it. I think that a public shaming is there's not only a professional element to it, I think there's a personal aspect to it, to me. But when the media, the cameras in the courtroom are teed up like this, and, we show up here today with the court having told us that we were going to conduct some business that somehow bleeds over into a forced resignation or however you characterize this, that, I don't feel like I have any other choice professionally. I have a life beyond this courtroom and beyond this case, and I have a family too, and I have a law practice. But I think had we been given some notice of what we were here, actually, if this had been framed in a pleading format or some formal disciplinary claim, which there's a process for that in our business, then we could have come in here today with an opportunity to refute some of those things that you clearly, had thought through and prepared for before we got here. And we didn't have that opportunity. And the idea that I'm going to have to go in here with in an open courtroom with cameras running and essentially defend myself against claims that I don't agree with without any notice and without any opportunity, I think is unfair. I also have some common sense. And, me going in there and standing my ground because my client wants me to is just going to make things worse for him. And so I'm going to withdraw my appearance. I'm going to walk out of here and I'm going to go down to my car and I'm going to call my staff and have them prepare a motion and I'm going to withdraw my appearance. But I'm doing it because I don't think I have any other choice professionally, not because I want to and not because my client wants me to. And I respect the court has an opinion, but we're professionals and we can disagree. And I'm extremely, I'd say frustrated probably is a soft word. Let's say it again. I think frustrated is probably a soft word with the idea that we showed up today without any real opportunity to prepare for any of this. And I just think it's improper. And that's where I am, and that's my position. And Goal says, I think we talked about when you asked for a disqualification, and I indicated on our phone conversation, I'm inclined to do that. It was a phone conversation that was not on the record, and then some follow-up emails. True. There's an informality to that. True. And you also said that you hadn't even done any research and, hadn't had time to talk to your senior judge and all these other things. And he hasn't filed a pleading with the court either. No, I'm doing this on my motion. And I'm a lawyer who practices in lots of courtrooms, and I've been through some disqualification actions. In 20 years, I've never had a disciplinary complaint in my life that's been confirmed, if you will. But I've seen lawyers disqualified, and there's a process for that. And it's not this. With all due respect, where you walk into somebody's office, a judge's office, and they read a prepared statement to you, and essentially the statement is an indictment on my professional activities. And then you're handed, essentially a sheet of paper, with two options. One of them is, I'm going to go out here and shame you on camera, or you can quit. You can understand how upset that would make any lawyer. And I don't think it's the right way to handle this from a due process standpoint. I don't think it's the right way to handle this from a due process standpoint. So I have no choice to, withdraw my appearance. Because I'm not going to go in there and take a public shaming without having any notice of it. That's where I am with it. Mr. Baldwin says, I'm the same withdrawing. I mirror what he said. I mean, I do appreciate giving us advance notice. If there's some appreciation for that, I do appreciate that. But beyond that, I wanted to take this, and finish it out. I'm stunned. I don't know what to say. So I'll just say I'm moving to withdraw orally. Okay. Is this court going to generate some further instructions on what to do with all of this discovery that we have? All this information? There's an order. I granted the state's protective order on discovery. No, I'm talking about my possession of all of this information. Am I to take out the trash can? Am I supposed to wait for another attorney? Is the court going to give us some guidance on how to move all this information from one law office to another? I did. When I granted the state's protective order, I think it's in the last paragraph of that protective order, directs you to return it all to the state of Indiana, all the copies, all whatever you gave them, they're required under that order to return to you. At the conclusion of this case, or your representation, I know what you're talking about. I read the order before I came in today. So we're supposed to just take everything back and give it to the state and just retain our work product until somebody asks us for it? Your work product is your work product. I mean, I would hope that you would share that with successor counsel. I would hope that you would help successor counsel just with the transfer of all the information, because that's in your client's best interest to do that. But that's entirely up to you. That's your work product that you've developed. I mean, clearly, the discovery is required to go back to the state. All right, what do you want to do with Mr. Allen? I can transport him back to the Department of Correction. Do you want to make a record with his? I mean, I think it's appropriate. It's appropriate that the court let him speak into the record his thoughts, unless the court just accepts that as notice that those are his opinions. Well, you wouldn't lie to me about that. I would not lie to you about anything, says Rozzi. So, of course, that's your representation. That's what he would say if he were brought in here. I can't imagine the DOC being comfortable bringing him into my office. I would not be comfortable having him in my office. Oh, really, bitch? Let's say it again. I can't imagine the DOC would be comfortable having him in my office. I would not be comfortable having him in my office. All right. Anyway, would the court also be inclined to mark as an exhibit the prepared statement so that it's part of the record? Oh, smart move, Bradley. Smart move, sir. She says, I have the record rolling. Oof, rough. That's rough. That's rough. Okay. Anyway, there's some more. We're going to pull this down. They never thought that would see the light of day. But there it is for you. So that was the in-chambers secret meeting where the threats to embarrass and publicly shame and accuse Baldwin and Rozzi of gross negligence and professional misconduct, etc., was held. The threats to do so in front of the cameras, though one time the cameras were allowed for that purpose of intimidation and coercion and blackmail, basically. So that's how it started. Okay, that's how it started. All right. Now we're going to look at a November 6th relator's brief in support of petition. Okay. Now, get ready for this. Over 5 years ago, after teens Abigail Williams and Liberty German were brutally murdered in Delphi, police announced that they had arrested Richard Allen for the murders, including, concluding a police investigation that has captured the world's attention and involved thousands of tips. At his initial hearing, and clad in protective gear for his own safety, Rick told the court he would be hiring private counsel. Rick was transported to the DOC for safekeeping. The judge removed himself from the case and a special judge was appointed. But a week later, Rick threw himself at the mercy of the court and requested a public defender. Andrew Baldwin and Brad Rozzi, attorneys with a combined 50 years of experience, were appointed. Over the next year, attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi zealously advocated on Rick's behalf. They appropriately asserted Rick's innocence after the public release of the probable cause affidavit. They repeatedly requested a change in the conditions of his confinement due to the obvious effects of the conditions we're having on his physical and mental health, what I would call well-being. And they prepared a trial strategy with Rick after pouring through thousands of pages, let me say tens of thousands of pages of discovery, to prepare his defense for a January 2024 trial. Never forget, it was supposed to be January. During that time, Rick never complained to the court about his attorneys. On the contrary, he unequivocally stated his desire to have attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi continue their zealous representation. Yes, yet less than 3 months before the trial, the court removed attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi as counsel, citing its extrajudicial finding, that's not a finding, that counsel had engaged in gross negligence. At Rick's direction, attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi entered appearances as private counsel, agreeing to continue representing him for free pro bono. But at a hearing held on October 31st, the court told Rick that it had grave concerns about his defense team and that he was entitled to a vigorous defense, and that the court cannot and will not allow these attorneys, Brad Rozzi and Andy Baldwin, to represent you. I can't do it, sir. I just can't, said Judge Gull. Rick's trial has been reset for a year from now, and he's been forced to start over with new attorneys. The court's statements about Rick's counsel have completely undermined the credibility of Rick's proffered defense. Rick has an original action currently pending in this court under case number 23SOR302 concerning the lack of public access to court records in his case. The lack of transparency is an important societal interest, but the issue here implicates Rick's fundamental constitutional rights to counsel and a fair trial. And this is the one where the Supreme Court decided favorably in the terms of Rozzi and Baldwin, okay? Background, 1A. Rick requested and was appointed competent and experienced counsel. On October 28, 2022, the state charged Rick with 2 counts of murder. Officers arrested Rick and took him into custody, where he has remained ever since. The Carroll Circuit Court ordered Rick transported to the DOC for safekeeping due to a toxic and harmful insistence on public information from media about the case. Yeah, but we know that was all bullshit because Judge Diener actually authored the safekeeping request for Tobe Lesenby and then signed his own order illegally before then stepping down or recusing himself. After sending Rick to the DOC, the judge recused himself. Fran Gull accepted appointment as a special judge. Rick requested a public defender to represent him. Attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi were appointed as Rick's counsel. Baldwin is one of only 4. Okay, listen up, y'all. Baldwin is one of only 4 Indiana attorneys certified as a criminal trial specialist by the National Board of Trial Advocacy, as authorized under Indiana Rule of Professional Conduct 7.4. He has nearly 30 years of criminal trial experience, handling hundreds of jury trials, representing numerous defendants charged with murder. Baldwin has never been disciplined or suspended in 30 years. Attorney Rozzi has over 20 years of criminal trial experience, handling thousands of cases, including 8 murder cases. Attorney Rozzi practices regularly in Carroll County and surrounding counties. He was born and raised in adjoining Cass County and is intimately familiar with the police officers and prosecutors investigating and prosecuting the case. Attorney Rozzi has never in 20 years been disciplined or suspended. Rick wants this partnership to handle his defense. On November 29th, 2022, the charging information and probable cause affidavit in Rick's case were made available to the public. Attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi issued a press release which responded to the allegations contained in the affidavit. They reasserted Rick's innocence and indicated they would continue to share exculpatory information with the public to the extent that they were ethically permitted to do so. Later that very day, the court entered a gag order prohibiting the parties from making extrajudicial statements about the case, which was reaffirmed after a hearing. The court also entered a protective order prohibiting the parties from divulging or granting access to the discovery material to all but certain people. On December 21st, 2022, Rick's counsel, Attorney Baldwin, accidentally emailed a summary log of the evidence on a flash drive received during discovery to one Brandon Woodhouse. The log did not contain any discovery. The log did not contain any information. The log did not contain any product of the state of Indiana. The log was merely a bullet point list of some evidence on a flash drive created by Attorney Baldwin. The log did not contain any substantive evidence, but was similar to a table of contents for the drive. Due to his declining mental and physical health, Rick asked to be moved out of maximum security segregation confinement. On April 5th, 2023, Rick moved to modify the safekeeping order, arguing that he was unrepresented when the order was entered, which was true, that no hearing had been held on the motion that he was allowed to attend or that he had representation for, that he was being held in a maximum security segregation unit at Westville Correctional Facility, generally reserved for violent convicted offenders, and that Westville Correctional Facility accurately had a history of unethical and inhumane treatment of its inmates. Rick described the conditions in which he was being held, as well as the obvious decline in his mental and physical health. Remember, this was just days into his absolute worst of his psychosis in April of 2023. Rick explained through his attorneys the significant hardship of his placement in Westville and the hardship that placement had on his ability to assist his attorneys in preparing his defense. The court obviously denied the motion, reaffirming its prior order, clarifying that the DOC could move Rick to accommodate his needs. Attorney Rozzi filed a tort claim notice to preserve Rick's rights to obtain private counsel in the future to file a civil suit relating to the conditions of his DOC confinement. Rick and his attorneys formulated a strategy of seeking a speedy trial and pursuing a defense of third-party guilt. Rick's counsel continued to file motions to change his confinement conditions. He and his attorneys also developed a trial strategy of seeking a speedy trial and pursuing a defense of third-party guilt, which means some other dudes did it, and we know that to be true. Several months before trial, Rick filed motions to suppress evidence, a motion in limine regarding ballistics evidence, that's bullshit, and a request for a hearing under Franks v. Delaware. Rick also signed a motion for a speedy trial, which Rick's attorneys plan to file in early November to lock in the January trial date. During a telephone conference with the court in early October, Rick's attorneys informed the court that they were ready to proceed with trial in January of 2024. In August of 2023, the trial court removed Rick's chosen counsel. I'm reading it backwards. The trial court removed Rick's chosen counsel over Rick's objections. In August 2023, a former employee of Attorney Baldwin's office, Mitch Westerman, stopped by Baldwin's office to visit. He slipped into a conference room, found crime scene photos, and by his own admission, secretly photographed some of the discovery material and disseminated it to various YouTubers. Attorney Baldwin was completely unaware Westerman had done this. When Attorney Baldwin learned that material had been disseminated, he and Attorney Rozzi discussed the matter in an email to the court. Prosecutor responded he had known about the leak for a day and that the state was in quote unquote investigating the matter. On October 9th, 2023, Westerman told Baldwin about his inappropriate criminal conduct in secretly photographing discovery items. Rick's counsel informed the state and the court the very next day, the following day. The parties had a telephone conference with the court that day to discuss the matter, and the state mentioned the issue of potentially disqualifying counsel. Remember that. Remember that. Who does it say mentioned the issue of disqualification? That's right. A day later, counsel informed Rick Allen of the matter, and Rick Allen immediately indicated he still wanted his attorneys to represent him, Baldwin and Rozzi, believing their representation was in his best interest. This letter from Rick was filed with the court on October 12th, 2023, as an attachment to a letter filed by Attorney Rozzi. Let's stop there. You can see, I don't think you guys get. We're going to pause. I don't think you guys get it. September, was it 18th? September 18th, 2023. You know what? I'm not going to dick around. In the chat, when was the Frank's memo filed? Was it 18th or 19th of September? You see, September, say, 18th, 2023, the nuclear bomb drops. The Frank's memorandum drops on Delphi September 18th, right? On October 9th, how many days is that? September 18th, the nuclear bomb drops on the Delphi case. On October 9th, Westerman says, oh, by the way, I leaked some shit. Does it sound like sabotage to you? This is an honest question. What comes after September? Let's see, September 18th, right? September 18th, the bomb drops. By September 20th, they were striking YouTube channels in a gang. It was a gang of trolls striking the YouTube channels. The next week, there were the death threats. The next week, Westerman says, hey, buddy, by the way, I sabotaged your team. You think it's coincidental? Do you think it's accidental, these turns of event? Do you think this mass leak in late October? Because let's be honest here, because there's a lie that's not making sense. Here's a fucking lie. The lie is this. That all happened before. That all happened before Frank's memorandum. No. Let's be honest here. It happened immediately after the Frank's memorandum. In the early days of October, the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd. Do you know how I know? I got all the receipts, by the way. I've got it all. October 3rd, 4th, October 2nd, 3rd, 4th. That's when all the YouTubers were losing. Let me tell you how it happened. All the YouTubers were losing their fucking minds on October 2nd, 3rd, 4th. Because they had decided to explode it in the Discords. Okay, so October 2nd, 3rd, 4th, the Discords were exploding with crime scene photos. All the YouTubers were having oh shit moments. Then by October 9th, Westerman calls Baldwin and says, it was me. You need to understand what actually happened. And as I said, the court ordered the attorneys to appear in chambers, and that's what we just read. Okay? See all this? October 19th, that's what we just read. We read the entire transcript pretty much. And it says, there's all this gross negligence was alleged, right? Issuing a press release, filing a motion, emailing a log, filing a tort claim, hiring a lawyer, Hennessy, okay? So it says that the court informed Rick's attorneys they had two options: voluntarily withdraw their appearances or be disqualified. As the court read its prepared statement in open court in front of the cameras. Attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi met with Rick, and he disagreed that trial counsel engaged in gross negligence and reaffirmed his desire for them to remain his counsel. Rick's attorneys informed the court they believed the court had engaged in an unconstitutional ambush of Rick and his counsel without due process. Read that. Baldwin and Rozzi informed the court that Gall had engaged in an unconstitutional ambush of Rick and his counsel without due process. They also informed the court, Judge Gall, that they believed their withdrawal was involuntary and done under duress, since their refusal to withdraw would publicly disparage their representation of the accused, framing their advocacy on his behalf as gross negligence. Okay? Such a public statement literally risked tainting the jury pool, harming their client's defense, undermining their professional relationship with the client, and possibly creating an actual conflict of interest for their continued representation. Faced with this dilemma, Baldwin and Rozzi withdrew their appearances. The judge entered the courtroom and went on the record without Rick or his attorneys being present, and stated there was an unexpected turn of events. Yeah, bitch, you planned it all. Okay. To continue to pursue Rick's trial strategy, counsel remained on the case as private counsel, but the court disqualified them. All right, so we'll skip ahead a bit. The trial court lacked any authority to remove Rick's entire defense team over his objection and based on a summary finding of quote unquote gross negligence. Original actions provide extraordinary remedies, and accordingly, writs of mandamus and prohibition will be issued only where the trial court has an absolute duty to act or refrain from acting. This court routinely relies on its original jurisdiction to address claims that attorneys have inappropriately been disqualified or that they should have been disqualified. Here, the trial court has an absolute duty to reinstate attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi, and the remedy on appeal is non-existent. Listen to that very closely, okay, please? The court has an absolute duty to reinstate Baldwin and Rozzi, and the remedy on appeal is literally non-existent. The Sixth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution provides, quote, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to have the assistance of counsel for his defense, close quotation. The right to counsel embraces not only the assistance of counsel, but also the reasonable opportunity to secure counsel of one's own choice. The attorney-client relationship, once established, is inviolate and should not be served or severed or subject to unwarranted interference. The attorney-client relationship is afforded the same venerable protections whether the lawyer is a public defender, acting pro bono, or privately retained. Indiana recognizes only two narrowly circumscribed situations where a trial court may sever the attorney-client relationship against the client wishes. One, when the lawyer is not a member of the Indiana State Bar, or two, where the lawyer has an actual conflict of interest that will obstruct his ability to provide effective representation. No Indiana court has ever tolerated a trial judge like Judge Gull removing a lawyer from a case over the client's objection based on the judge's subjective belief that the lawyer is negligent or even grossly negligent. And the courts across the country regularly issue extraordinary writs in criminal cases to reinstate defense attorneys who have been kicked off the case or cases for conduct the trial court found upsetting or negligent, right? So you should pay attention to this. The reason I'm reading this is because this is what was successfully argued, okay? When a court believes it possesses objective evidence to support a lawyer's removal, it should clearly articulate that evidence on the record and exhaust other possible remedies before resorting to the removal of counsel, such as censure, disciplinary referral, or contempt proceedings. Removal, if ever considered by a judge, should be an absolute last resort, and the removal proceeding should occur at a hearing when the defendant and his chosen counsel are provided notice and an opportunity to be heard on why the attorney-client relationship should be severed. All of this means Judge Gull overstepped her bounds. Here, the judge acted to terminate the attorney-client relationship, which she had an absolute duty to refrain from doing so. This court should mandate, and by that the arguer is saying the Supreme Court should mandate attorneys Rozzi and Baldwin be immediately reinstated, which is what happened. Attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi were active members of and in good standing with the Indiana Bar. Check. And there's no conflict of interest even alleged between Rick and his attorneys. Check. The inquiry should end here. But attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi were removed because the trial court disagreed with their conduct. She made a sua sponte summary finding in chambers of gross negligence, quote unquote, after the state raised the issue of disqualifying. Remember, the state, McClellan, It's entirely unclear from the record what the court found was gross negligence. The record only includes Attorney Razi's recollection of the acts mentioned by the court because Rick has been unable to obtain a transcript. No, we got it now. That's what we just read to you. Okay. Nevertheless, the judge's subjective allegations of gross negligence fall into two categories. One, a mere disagreement with zealous defense tactics, or two, concerns about the unintended release of evidence, which objectively had no effect on the lawyer's ongoing effective representation of Rick Allen. Well, I believe it to be both, okay? A Sixth Amendment interference with counsel claim at its zenith is at its zenith when a trial court dismisses a lawyer because it disagrees with competent advocacy. This is what precisely occurred here. Once Attorney Razi and Baldwin were appointed and became Rick's counsel, the court lacked any authority to obstruct or sever that relationship. If the court found the attorney's conduct upsetting or negligent, it should have clearly articulated that evidence on the record and exhausted all other possible remedies before removing them from the case, such as censure, disciplinary referral, or contempt proceedings. She had an absolute duty to refrain from obstructing and severing the relationship, especially when attorneys Baldwin and Razi suggested a remedy in the event the court was considering removal. This appeals court should grant emergency relief and reinstate Baldwin and Razi, which is what happened. This is why we're reading through this. But reinstatement of Rick's counsel of choice is not sufficient to remedy the violation. Rick was pursuing a speedy trial and third-party guilt strategy. He intended to file a speedy trial request in early November, but the judge kicked them out of the case, rejected their appearance, and struck their pleadings. This appeals court is the only court in the state that can order a speedy trial date. If it does not seize this opportunity now, it will forever be lost. So we're going to skip the rest because the rest was denied, okay? Now, what's funny, though, here is I hate to say, but the receiver of Prof's 2-pounder, technically 1.7, Mr. Todd Rokita himself, Theodore Rokita, Indiana Attorney General of Indiana, one who has had the power this whole time to do something about this situation in Delphi, literally decided that he was going to side with Judge Fran Gull. That's right. Mr. Rokita is a bad actor. Okay? He decided that he was going to side with Miss Fran Gull. And he sent in this Attorney General's response to Relator Richard Allen's petition for a writ, okay? And here we'll quickly go through a couple of the pieces. I'm going to skip some of this. It says, an original action is a limited remedy governed by strict procedural rules. Original actions are viewed with disfavor and may not be used as substitutes for appeals. Before a writ will be entertained, the relator must raise a question by written motion to the trial court. If remedy by way of appeal is full and adequate, a party may not invoke the jurisdiction of this court under the original action rule. A writ will not issue unless the relator has a clear and unquestioned right to relief. Well, here you argued wrong, dumbass. You argued wrong, dumbass, because clearly there was not remedy on appeal. Therefore, the Supreme Court did decide to hear this. Rokita. A writ reinstating Allen's former attorneys is not presently warranted. The conditions precedent for a writ are not satisfied as the claim was not clearly presented to the trial court, and remedy by appeal is adequate. No, it's not. Appeal is both adequate and preferred to review whether a trial court abused its discretion by removing counsel. No, sir. You were wrong. Allen did not seek interlocutory appeal of either the trial court's order granting a withdrawal of counsel or its subsequent order declining to allow counsel to appear pro bono. The record does not indicate that Allen was asked his newly appointed counsel to appeal, nor does relator explain why the original action counsel could not file a limited appearance to seek certification to the court's order, as counsel did to file motions in preparation of his action. The writ cannot be used as a substitute for appeal. Wrong. This decision could have been appealed. Wrong. How are you going to appeal to a judge who's not going to hear it? Disqualification of counsel can be required, or it can be at the discretion of trial court. The extraordinary remedy of a writ is not available where the matter is within the discretion of the trial court. Yeah, but you're going to find out, Mr. Rokita, that Ms. Gull overstepped her discretion, and you're going to learn that shortly. An action for mandate cannot be employed to adjudicate and establish a right or define or impose a duty. Though this court has reviewed disqualification of counsel through original actions, the court has not issued a writ to reverse the trial court's discretionary removal of counsel, but has issued writs where counsel's continued representation exceeded statutory authority. Well, guess what? It has now, dumbass. All right. Allen does not identify an absolute duty to reject counsel's withdrawal or to permit them to reinitiate representation. The law does not place an absolute duty upon courts not to interfere with the attorney-client relationship, but it bars arbitrary and unjustified interference. Hello, this was arbitrary and unjustified, and you're about to find out when the Supreme Court shoves this document up your ass, sir. Allen contends that respondent acted to terminate the attorney-client relationship when she had an absolute duty to refrain from doing so. You should say Allen correctly contends that respondent Judge Gull acted to terminate the attorney-client relationship when she had an absolute duty to refrain from doing so. I'm glad I fixed that for you, dumbass. Allen does not identify the origin of this absolute duty because it's constitutional. He doesn't have to. It's a Sixth Amendment right, dumbass. Hello. Allen's brief does not contain the verbatim statement of the relevant parts of all cases, statutes, and other authorities relied upon required by the rules. It states the Sixth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, dumbass. Okay. Your Indiana Attorney General, also known as Todd Rokita, your Indiana Attorney General, who you voted into office and who you should remove from office, claims that the right to choose counsel or continue representation is not absolute, that the Sixth Amendment guarantees every defendant the assistance of counsel. Those who do not need counsel appointed also have the constitutional right to choose counsel. But indigent defendants do not have the right to choose appointed counsel. The U.S. Supreme Court has not recognized for appointed or retained counsel a distinct right of continuity of representation, and the court has rejected a constitutional right to a meaningful relationship with counsel. But the Sixth Amendment's purpose of ensuring a fair trial imposes a baseline requirement of competence on whatever lawyer is chosen or appointed. The right to choose counsel is not absolute. Quote, while the right to select and be represented by one's preferred attorney is comprehended by the Sixth Amendment, the essential aim of the amendment is to guarantee an effective advocate for each criminal defendant, rather to ensure that a defendant will inexorably be represented by the lawyer who he prefers. But for retained counsel, courts must recognize a presumption in favor of the defendant's counsel of choice. Dumbass. All right. Indiana has not addressed whether the distinction between retained and appointed counsel alters a court's authority to substitute counsel, and authority is mixed in other jurisdictions where it has now, dumbass. All right. We're going to skip ahead. The right to counsel must be balanced with the need for a fair trial. Contrary to Allen's claims, more than two circumstances may require a court to interfere with the defendant's preference for counsel. As Allen recognizes, the defendant cannot insist upon counsel who is not admitted to practice. A court may act to remove counsel when the representation creates an actual or serious potential for conflict of interest, including refusing to permit the defendant to waive the conflict. But these are not the only two circumstances that allow interference with preferred counsel. Wrong, dumbass. Counsel's conduct or personal circumstances may justify removal. Gross incompetence or physical incapacity of counsel or contemptuous conduct cannot be cured by a citation for contempt may justify the court's removal of an attorney even over the defendant's objection. A trial court may disqualify an attorney for a violation of the rules of professional conduct that arises from the attorney's representation before the court, but it must be done with due process, dumbass. A defendant may not insist on the counsel of an attorney who has a previous or ongoing relationship with an opposing party. That's not appropriate to this, or it doesn't apply to this. The need for efficient administration of justice may require a removal. It doesn't apply to this, dumbass. Courts must also balance the needs of the public and victims. The general public and the victims of a crime also have an interest in even-handed administration of justice. Yeah, which is your responsibility to ensure due process. All right, so I'm going to skip the rest of this. This does not apply because the speedy was denied, but for all of you who want to know, once again, this is from the Indiana Attorney General's response to Relator Richard Allen's petition for a writ. This is your Indiana Attorney General, dumbass, Todd Rokita, siding with Judge Gull in this incident, and the Supreme Court literally shoved it up his ass, but we'll talk about that later. Now let's look again at Mr. Lehman's and Ms. Weineke's response. All right. You may remember some of what I just cited, and it says this case presents the paradigm situation for a writ. This court routinely relies on its original jurisdiction, meaning the Supreme Court, to address claims where attorneys have been or should have been disqualified. The respondent and the Attorney General do not dispute this fact. The unlawful disqualification of a lawyer strikes at the heart of the public trust in the integrity of the judicial process and requires this appeals court invoke its inherent authority to supervise the conduct of lower courts. Respondent severed the attorney-client relationship on her own motion over Rick's objection. Respondent misapplies State Ex Rel Jones v. Knox Superior Court when she argues a writ is inappropriate. In Jones, and remember, this is all correctly argued, the court denied a writ and prohibition petition that challenged the trial court's decision to disqualify criminal defense counsel in a murder case. There, the attorneys initiated their own withdrawal. This court did not deny the writ for failing to have a clear, unequivocal right to reinstatement of counsel because this court, quote, will not countermand the trial court's ruling that placed defense counsel in precisely the position their motion indicated their willingness to be, close quotation. This court did not doubt for a moment that a court-initiated discharge would properly fall within the court's original jurisdiction. This court is generally of the view that a trial court is limited in its authority to remove a criminal defendant's court-appointed counsel. Now, you listen closely to that, ladies and gentlemen, because that one right there is part of what was discussed in the opinion. Okay, so listen. The appeals court is generally of the view, according to Mr. Lehman and Ms. Weineke, that the appeals court is generally of the view that a trial court is limited in its authority to remove a criminal defendant's court-appointed counsel. Check. Here, respondent made it clear that she was discharging attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi on her own motion. You understand that? She, Judge Gull, was discharging Baldwin and Rozzi on her own motion. It's in the transcript, regardless of how the defense counsel proceeded or what the prosecutor wanted her to do. Remember, it was no due process. Respondent initially suggested defense counsel should just, quote unquote, read between the lines regarding what she was saying. Eventually, she made it clear she was unequivocally severing the attorney-client relationship and that there was no situation where attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi could proceed with representing Rick. Remember when Rozzi says, so basically what you're saying, you guys either quit on your own accord or make me fire you? No, what I'm saying to you is this is what I plan to say in court on the open record in front of the cameras when we convene. Well, so is this a culmination of what you're removing us from the case? I will, based on what I've just shared with you. Okay, just want to make sure. And I'm just giving you the opportunity to have the conversation. How do you want that to go? I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this, but I'll do what I have to do. Okay. Respondent acknowledged that the prosecutor had initially asked to remove the defense counsel during an informal phone call. But she concluded that she did not need a formal hearing on the request or even a pleading on file because she was acting to sever the entire defense on her own motion. Remember, Rozzi said, I am extremely, I'd say frustrated, is probably a soft word, with the idea that we showed up today without a real opportunity to prepare for any of this. I think it's improper, and that's where I'm at in my position. Gull says, well, I think we talked about when when the prosecutor asked for disqualification, I indicated in our phone conversation, I'm inclined to do that. Rozzi says, well, it was a phone conversation that was not on the record. All right. Skip ahead to some of this. B, respondent had an absolute duty to refrain from severing the attorney-client relationship. Not a single Indiana case has tolerated a similar behavior from a trial court judge. Do you understand that? Not a single Indiana case has tolerated this type of similar behavior from any trial court judge. Respondent had a duty. There are only two narrow situations where trial court has jurisdiction to sever that relationship. One, the lawyer is not a member of the bar, okay? Or two, the lawyer has an actual conflict of interest, okay? No Indiana court has ever tolerated a trial court judge removing a lawyer from a case over the client's objection based on anything other than these two reasons. Throughout their 8,000 words and nearly 50 pages of briefing, the responding parties failed to provide a single Indiana case tolerating this behavior from a trial court judge. Every Indiana disqualification case cited by the responding parties involved one of the following. Now, you keep this in mind because this was Todd Rokita, right? Every single disqualification either involved a conflict of interest, or an unlicensed attorney. Got it? Respondent obstructed the attorney-client relationship for reasons totally unconnected to the Sixth Amendment. When respondent severed the attorney-client relationship, she was acting on subjective opinions about the defense's conduct outside of the courtroom, not on any Sixth Amendment concerns that might alter the trial's outcome. Respondent argues that attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi committed multiple violations of the rules of professional conduct and that she acted to, quote, protect relators' Sixth Amendment rights to effective assistance of counsel, close quotation. The rules of professional conduct are not coextensive with the Sixth Amendment guarantee of assistance of counsel. Ethical standards can apply to a broad range of attorney conduct totally unconnected to the Sixth Amendment. And the Sixth Amendment is concerned with deficient performance that has a reasonable probability to alter the trial's outcome. Attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi did not violate any ethical rules. And the judge, if she believed there was a violation of the rules of professional conduct, should have reported the violation in accordance with her obligation under the rules of judicial conduct 2.15. But of course, this never occurred, despite the respondent claiming that there was a violation of ethical rules nearly a year ago when counsel issued a press release affirming Richard Allen's innocence. In any event, respondent's subjective concerns with attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi are wholly unrelated to the Sixth Amendment. Respondent's primary ground for her subjective belief about the counsel's performance was the evidence leak discovered in October, which was, remember, 2 to 3 weeks after the Franks memorandum dropped, coinkadinkily. Yet attorney Baldwin was a victim of a crime committed by Mitch Westerman, who took photographs of evidence. Law enforcement, a prosecutor, and the Johnson Superior Court have reviewed this matter and found probable cause to believe attorney Baldwin was a victim of a crime. D. Rick clearly and repeatedly asked respondent to refrain from severing the attorney-client relationship, but she acted anyway. That means go. Disqualification was first mentioned by the state, Mr. Nick McClellan, in a telephone call, October 10, 2023. The very next day, Rick affirmed in his writing he still wanted attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi to represent him. Trial counsel filed that letter with the court and included a lengthy letter to the court explaining that the court lacked jurisdiction to disqualify because there was no conflict of interest. The same day, Judge Gull ordered counsel to cease working on Rick's case. Before the hearing on October 19th, attorney Baldwin retained counsel and filed a memorandum, again informing the trial court that it lacked jurisdiction to remove counsel absent a conflict of interest. During an in-chambers proceeding held before the hearing in open court, when respondent revealed that on her own motion, she was disqualifying counsel, attorney Rozzi argued that respondent lacked authority to do so. Boy, isn't he good? Isn't he good? So Rozzi correctly argued that Gull lacked authority to disqualify counsel on her own motion. Boy, this is rich. And after that in-chambers proceeding, Rozzi filed a notice informing the court he was remaining on the case as Rick's attorney, as well as a motion for respondent's recusal. Of course, she struck those pleadings and indicated she would take no action on them. Attorney Baldwin, by Mr. Hennessy, his counsel, filed a motion to reconsider his removal as counsel, arguing that respondent, Judge Gull, lacked jurisdiction to disqualify, particularly considering that a motion for her recusal was pending. Of course, She did not take any action on that motion. All right. The day before the next scheduled hearing on Rick's case, attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi entered their appearance on Rick's behalf as private pro bono counsel. At the hearing, Rick's attorneys argued that the court had no authority to remove them as counsel. Remember, they were willing. Now you think about this. Baldwin and Rozzi were willing to continue forward pro bono. Put that in your notebooks. Check. Judge Gall delayed the efficient administration of justice. Her conduct in this case was particularly harmful because severing the attorney-client relationship delayed the efficient administration of justice. The Attorney General, Todd Rokita, argued that the need for efficient administration of justice should be balanced against a defendant's Sixth Amendment rights. Indeed, Indiana courts do not require judges to unflinchingly grant continuances or delay proceedings so a defendant can bring in counsel of his choice on the eve of trial. A defendant's second gamesmanship for a new lawyer causes substantial loss of time for lawyers, jurors, and the court. But quite the opposite situation occurred here. Respondent Judge Gold delayed proceedings to insert counsel of her choice. When the judge severed the attorney-client relationship in October, trial was scheduled to begin in January. Just imagine. 3 months before trial was scheduled to begin. Rozzi and Baldwin spent nearly a year reviewing the discovery, conducting depositions, developing a speedy trial strategy, and a defense of third-party perpetrators. Attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi were active members of and in good standing with the Indiana Bar, and they told the judge they were ready to try this case in January. There's nothing in the record that suggests otherwise. The judge, on the other hand, had not ruled on several of Rick's motions. The Franks memo, which sought to suppress the warrant search that uncovered a firearm, had been pending since September 18th, 2023. But as of October 31st, Judge Gall had not finished reading the motion. She's quoted as saying, "I haven't even finished reading it." The motion for the state to produce Rule 404 and 405 evidence, which would inform counsel's decision whether to put Rick on the stand, had been pending for nearly a year. Also pending is an August 8, 2023 request for transcript of the June 15th hearing, which counsel needed for use at a deposition and a hearing. Finally, a motion in limine on ballistics had been pending since June 13th, 2023. The motion seeks to exclude purported expert testimony that an unspent cartridge found near the crime scene had been cycled through a gun found in Rick's home. A ruling from this motion is obviously critical to the efficient administration of justice. Don't you find it interesting that they were delaying all of the ballistics aspect of the case? Do you notice what we just read in that paragraph? Okay, so that paragraph there, the second paragraph under F, is and the third, all refer to the ballistics being all of the ballistics aspect of the case that was being delayed intentionally. Respondent severed that attorney-client relationship over Rick's objection and thrust new attorneys upon him who were wholly unprepared for a 3-week trial in 3 months. Remember, it was scheduled to begin here on January 8th, 2024. No attorney coming on to this case could be ready for a trial of this complexity within that time frame. Only attorneys who have worked on this case for over a year could be prepared. In short, only attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi can be ready for trial within the limits of Criminal Rule 4. And even not even, listen, Baldwin and Rozzi should have been preparing for 3 to 4 years. Let's be honest here. A direct appeal after a jury trial is wholly inadequate. Trial has already been continued at the request of new public defenders by 10 months to October 2024, and the trial may very well be continued again. When trial eventually proceeds, there will be an unresolved Sixth Amendment issue. Carroll County, Allen County, the witnesses, the families, the lawyers, and Rick will be dragged through a constitutionally infirm trial. The Sixth Amendment issue will permeate every aspect of this case, rendering a fair trial impossible and a tremendous waste of resources and time. Trial will be for practice only. Okay? And it goes on, okay? And it goes on into why judge should be disqualified. We'll skip some of that because there's something further I want to do. Just a moment. Okay, next up, we're going to bring up a real hit. All right, what is this, Prof? This is from the Supreme Court hearing that many of you may or may not have watched. I don't know how many of you watched it, but it was January 18, 2024. Many of you probably did watch it. Remember, the sound was bad. There was an echo. So what I have done here, because the state failed miserably, the attorneys for the state failed miserably. So I have only selected to read portions of Lehman's arguments here, because this is what you need to know, because this is what ended up being worthwhile. Okay, so we'll take a close look at some of Attorney Lehman's arguments. What he says here is, no Indiana court has tolerated a trial judge removing a lawyer from a case over the client's objections based on the judge's subjective belief the lawyer is negligent or being ineffective. Cases across the entire country do not tolerate the removal of the entire defense team from a case over the client's objection, where the lawyer is licensed in the jurisdiction and prepared for trial on the scheduled date. When a judge severs the attorney-client relationship over the client's objection, the integrity of our entire judicial system is undermined, and the unauthorized action necessitates that this court intervene and invoke its inherent authority to supervise the conduct of the lower courts. On October 12th, the judge ordered counsel to, quote, cease work on Mr. Allen's case until we meet on the 19th. This was a period where intensive work was occurring on the case. Well, remember, on the 19th was when she had the in chambers discussion that we read to start the show tonight. So on the 12th, she ordered them to stop working, and on the 19th, she basically booted their asses. On October 19th, the judge took clearly coercive action to sever the attorney-client relationship on her own motion. The judge was without jurisdiction to sever the entire defense team over the objection of Mr. Allen, his licensed counsel, both who remain active and in good standing in the state of Indiana. Justice Mazza says, without jurisdiction, explain that. Why was the judge without jurisdiction? Judge, I think the judge here exceeded her jurisdiction when she refused to accept Rick Allen's wishes when she had an absolute duty to act upon them. And the judge crossed the barrier of neutrality and entered into the realm of being an advocate. And when the defendant is saying, this is what I want, this is what I desire, then the judge is without jurisdiction and has an absolute duty to act upon the client's wishes under those circumstances. So isn't your argument more accurately phrased that she's under a duty to let them back onto the case? It's not a question of the court's jurisdiction being exceeded, is it? Attorney Mark Lehman says, no, Judge. I see those as one and the same. Are you talking about authority or jurisdiction? I mean, we have a lot of cases that define both of those differently. Attorney Mark Lehman says, Judge, I think that under either construction, I see this as the judge is without authority, or excuse me, the judge is under an absolute duty to act upon the wishes of the defendant under these circumstances. Chief Justice Rush says, okay, but you don't cite a lot in that. So when you talk about an absolute duty, we have cases that say courts can remove counsel for various reasons. If they're not a member of the bar, if there's a conflict that is really to the detriment of the client. So there's not an absolute duty to always leave counsel on, correct? There is some discretion the trial court has. Attorney Mark Lehman says, there's an absolute duty to follow the client's wishes. And when a conflict of interest arises, the issue is whether the client fully understands that, whether he's making a knowing and voluntary decision in that regard. An absolute duty is found under the Sixth Amendment, asks Chief Justice Rush. Judge, I think the absolute duty could just be under this court's case law, but I think in the aggregate that the three violations of the Sixth Amendment provide this, constitutes three situations wherein their totality, they clearly place the limit on the judge. Judge Rush, is there a reason why you didn't file a state constitutional claim? I was sort of surprised by that under Article 1, Section 13. Mark Lehman says, Judge, we didn't feel like we had the record that had preserved that issue and developed a separate argument under the Indiana Constitution. But we are not arguing that this court isn't free to proceed under that analysis. We basically had 5 or 6 days under a situation where the judge wasn't even giving us a transcript to see exactly what took place within that October 19th hearing. Justice Rush, you have a lot of concerns. You've had a lot of concerns, and you do a nice job laying those out in your brief, but there's a couple of things. You're asking the court to issue a ruling for speedy trial. It appears Mr. Allen signed that with his attorneys in August, but they never filed it, correct? Attorney Lehman, yes, I think when he signed it, they were outside the 70 days. But you acknowledge that you're asking us to grant something that wasn't requested at the trial level? Well, it wasn't requested at the trial level, Your Honor, because it wasn't necessary until October 31st when the judge removed them the third and final time. So they had it for 2 months and didn't file it? Yes, Your Honor. They had it and did not file it. One, there wouldn't have been a reason to file it. They had made, so the speedy trial was an intimate part of their strategy, and they had developed a strategy and tactics with Mr. Allen as to when to specifically file that. The request for the completion of discovery was granted by the judge, but that deadline was ordered by the court to be November 1st. And the tactic there would have been to file for a speedy trial right after that to lock in the trial date. Okay. But Your Honor, that request, because it's the relief that our client wants, so we need to present it to this court. Obviously, if this court reinstates Attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi and others, the judge off and orders the judge off the case, and we proceed to move forward, then they can refine that with the senior judge who would take over the case. All right. But does your argument depend on finding the trial court's underlying findings of gross negligence and incompetence were wrong? No. If she's right about those findings, why isn't that, says Judge Slaughter. And they go on and on. Let's skip ahead. Excuse me. All right, let's see. Skipping ahead, I'm trying to find the next page. Let's see. Because what they get into is talking about the evidence and the trial record and the speedy trial. I'm trying to skip past that stuff. Let's see. Pardon me. Okay, here we go. This is what I was looking for, the rebuttal. So he comes back for the rebuttal and he says, I'd like to begin by correcting the record. The judge says that we don't know what Rick Allen's wishes were, and the Attorney General says nothing is clear. On October 11th, let me pull this up so I can say hi to you. Okay. On October 11th, 2023, Rick Allen filed the following. Attorney Lehman then reads a letter that Rick Allen sent to the court. Now listen to this. Dear Judge Gull, please accept this letter as confirmation that I have communicated with my attorney, Attorney Bradley Rozzi, regarding the circumstances regarding the leaking of sensitive information on this case. I am aware that the images of crime scene photos and other related documents were taken by a friend and former employee of Attorney Baldwin at Attorney Baldwin's office. I have discussed with Attorney Rozzi the potential impact that the distribution of these documents could have on my defense. Attorney Rozzi has also communicated with me that the prosecutor has requested that the attorney be disqualified from representing me in this case. I do not want this to happen. I want Mr. Baldwin and Mr. Rozzi to continue to represent me until this case is resolved, one way or the other. Chief Justice Rush says, we have the letter. And Attorney Lehman says, yes, it's on page 221 of the record, Your Honor. Justice Moulter says, counsel, what if we end up agreeing with the state with respect to the court-appointed counsel, but we end up agreeing with you with respect to volunteer counsel? I just want to make sure I understand. Are you only interested in having them reinstated as court-appointed counsel, or do you have an alternative request for their participation as pro bono counsel? Attorney Lehman says, our obligation is the defendant. The defendant wants attorneys Rozzi and Baldwin to represent him. And he cannot be more clear despite what the other side has tried to represent. But to do a half measure is to credit the judge and the attorney general for allowing this to happen, because Mr. Rozzi and Baldwin were the ones who had an absolute duty to protect their clients' wishes. And they did everything they could to do that. Put them back on the case. You say, you're working for free, or Mr. Allen needs to pay you, is to punish Mr. Allen and Mr. Rozzi and Mr. Baldwin for doing what their ethical rules require them to do, which is give zealous advocacy for your client. And those gentlemen, when faced with a real tough call, financial tough call, career tough call, they showed up on October 31st and said, listen, our client, he's been clear what he wants. And this is what we are willing to do in order to protect his rights. But to say they need to go back in and work for free, or that he needs to pay them, is to miss what happened here, which is the judge had an absolute duty to act. And that is to accept his letter and his representation of what his expectations were, in that I want these gentlemen to see this case to its end. We, the attorney general and the judge, want to create ambiguity where none exists. We don't have records like this in other cases. The gentleman could not have been more clear on October 11th. They could not have been more clarity on October 19th. There could not have been more clarity on October 31st. And if the court looks at the new filings, where he is also waiting for this court to rule because he's confused as to who his lawyers are, we have some clarity here. And to do anything short of putting them right back in where they were when the rights were violated would be a half measure justice. So we'll accept whatever the court's ruling is, but I think that alternative there falls short. With regards to what Wheat says where the court justifiably finds an actual conflict of interest, that's when the discretion kicks in. Conflicts of interest are different than these rules that the judge is citing, because a conflict of interest, the judge is complicit in the ethical violation because she has two appearances representing both parties in front of her. And they're different because we know that's a situation where the lawyer hasn't fully and fairly advised the defendant as to what the repercussions are on proceeding forward. Absent a conflict of interest, we trust these letters like October 11th from these defendants. We trust they understand what's going on, that they have cooperated with their lawyers and have developed a good trial strategy and tactic to catch that prosecutor off on his back foot on a trial that was supposed to happen. In January, and have a well-developed strategy of third-party guilt. These lawyers knew what they were doing. They had articulated in 100-something pages of briefing, here's what we see in the case, we're ready to go forward with trial. So conflict of interest doesn't apply, and that's what Wheat is clearly about. Conflict of interest are different, and this court would be the first court in Indiana for sure, if not the first court in the nation, to say that we will treat all kinds of ethical violations like pretrial publicity or the inadvertent violation of a discovery order as something on the same level as Wheat's conflict of interest. That's unheard of. And this court should not be using the original action to create new law like the judge wants us to say here. Justice Massa and Justice Slaughter, you have asked me a question about ineffective assistance of counsel. I'm clouded sometimes by my judgment because the rules that the judge cited here aren't ineffective. But absolutely, a defendant could waive a claim of ineffective assistance of counsel on the record, and that's what our conflict of interest case law establishes. If you pull the gentleman in and you explain to him what your concerns are, and you're going to make sure that he knowingly and voluntarily knows what's going on, and he wants to proceed forward, yes, you can waive ineffective assistance of counsel claim. So if a client wants to represent himself, he can waive his right to effective assistance of counsel if he knowingly and voluntarily says, I want to go forward and do this on my own. My troubles with answering that question, I feel so passionately, and Mr. Allen and attorneys Rozzi and Baldwin feel so passionately, that what the judge is talking about here is zealous advocacy, defending the rights of their client and trying to get this thing to trial quickly. And the reasons that the judge is stating in her brief, which are a little different than the reasons on the record, but none of those are what we see as relating to ineffective assistance of counsel. Or would even, if we've proven to be something wrong, aren't going to meet the Strickland prejudice wrong. But yes, if these things could ever arise to ineffective assistance of counsel and justices, I'm not conceding that, but if they could, hypothetically, yes, you can bring the defendant in and you can waive those rights, but that's not what we have here. In the end, Your Honors, the judge exceeded her jurisdiction and refused to accept Rick Allen's wishes when she had an absolute duty to act upon them. And there's an emergency that exists. I think when these things are before this court, there should not be a question as to whether original action exists. And there is more clarity when we see records across this state as to what this gentleman's wishes are. And they are undisputed. And I think that the judge had an absolute duty to recognize what Rick Allen wanted to go forward with trial in January. And this case should be heard in Carroll County today rather than before the Indiana Supreme Court. But I appreciate your time and consideration. And we ask you to grant the relief that we have requested. Okay, so that was Lehman's arguments for the most part. Okay. And as I said, and as you all know, Mr. Lehman successfully argued his position on Rick Allen's behalf. Thank God. And it's, regardless of the outcome of trial, this would have been a greater injustice, right? So here's the order here. It says this relator, Richard Allen, seeks relief from this Indiana Supreme Court under the rules of procedure for original actions. Relator has requested a permanent writ asking this court to, 1, order the trial court to reinstate his former trial counsel, attorneys Andrew Baldwin and Brad Rossi, as his court-appointed counsel. 2, order the trial court to commence relator's trial within 70 days from the issuance of the writ. And 3, remove the special judge from the relator's case and appoint a new special judge. Well, having considered the written submission, which we read, and having heard the arguments of counsel, which we read, a majority of the court, the Supreme Court of Indiana, they voted to grant the petition for the writ as to relator's request to reinstate attorneys Baldwin and Rossi as his court-appointed counsel. The court denied all other relief sought and issued a written opinion explaining its reasons. Okay. And this was done in Indianapolis on January 18th, 2024. Okay. Now give me a moment. All right. And here's the opinion. It says, Supreme Court case 23S OR 311, State X, relator Richard Allen, Carroll County, and the Frangal, decided February 8, 2024. Okay. And here's the opinion. State charged Richard Allen 2 counts of murder because he couldn't afford an attorney. Trial court appointed public defenders Andrew Baldwin and Brad Rossi to represent him. But after about a year, the special judge presiding over the case became concerned they were not representing Allen effectively, so she disqualified them over Allen's objection, replaced them with 2 new public defenders, and continued Allen's trial for at least 9 months so that his new trial attorneys would have enough time to prepare. Allen then retained 2 appellate attorneys who filed a verified petition for a writ in our court requesting that we mandate Baldwin and Rossi's reinstatement as court-appointed counsel, that Allen's criminal trial begin within 70 days, and that the new special judge replace the current special judge. The special judge and the attorney general both opposed the petition, which I read to you, some of that. And we held an oral argument, which I read to you. After considering all parties' excellent written and oral submissions, we granted Allen's request to reinstate Baldwin and Rozzi, but denied his other two requests in a short order with opinion to follow. Here we explain our reasons for these decisions. In short, we reinstated Baldwin and Rozzi as Allen's court-appointed counsel because the trial court did not find that their disqualification was a necessary last resort after weighing the prejudice to Allen. We denied Allen's request for trial within 70 days because he did not make that request in trial court. And we denied Allen's request to replace the special judge because he did not overcome our presumption of impartiality by identifying facts showing clearly that the special judge is biased or prejudiced. Oh boy. Which means, honestly, I'll say this, in my opinion, this means that the attorneys themselves didn't do a good job of showing goals, prejudice, and bias to the appellate court, or to the Supreme Court, I'm sorry. So they should have shown to the Supreme Court a better showing of Judge Gull's prejudice and bias, but they failed to do so. In regards to the speedy trial within 70 days, that was just a procedural matter, so that's easily understandable. But they definitely slapped Judge Gull in the face as hard as shit with this particular order and opinion. All right, so it goes into facts and procedural history. We'll go quickly through the pertinent part of this. We're going to skip over. So the parts that refers to the successful arguments regarding the reinstatement of Baldwin and Rozzi, we're going to read through that, but we're going to skip over the other two aspects, which are not necessary to read through. On February 2017, two teenage girls, Abigail Williams and Liberty German, were killed in Delphi, Indiana. 5 years later, in October 2022, Allen was arrested and charged with unaliving them. The trial court judge, that being Benjamin Diener, improperly transferred Allen to the Department of Correction for his safety, basically because he signed his own safekeeping request, but that's a whole other subject. He then recused himself. A special judge, Francis Gull, was then appointed, and because Allen could not afford an attorney, the judge appointed Baldwin and Rozzi to represent him at public expense. But a year later, the special judge lost faith in these attorneys' ability to assist Allen with his defense effectively, so she ultimately disqualified them as counsel. A leak of confidential case materials, including crime scene photos, triggered the disqualification. Baldwin and Rozzi represent that allegedly in August of 2023, one of Baldwin's friends and former employees, Mitchell Westerman, visited offices of Baldwin and secretly copied discovery materials, including crime scene photos, and distributed them to others. I mean, mainly YouTubers. Okay, after discovering the leak, Baldwin and Rozzi notified the special judge and the prosecutor on October 6th. But remember what I told you. I don't believe a goddamn word of it. I don't believe a fucking word of it. I don't believe a single fucking goddamn fucking word of it, because none of this bullshit's ever made sense. Everybody fucking lied. Everybody knows what happened. They're all fucking lying. They're covering their asses, and they're blaming Baldwin, Rozzi, and Westerman. Now, what really happened? All we know is that on October 2nd and 3rd, YouTubers were freaking the fuck out, all in the Discord, and I got it all. Sorry, I got a little upset about that one. They explained that after Westerman told Baldwin on October 9th that he had taken this shit, Baldwin and Rozzi relayed that information to the prosecutor. 2 days later, the prosecutor emailed the defense counsel and the special judge, informing them that the individual to whom Westerman allegedly provided information or materials committed suicide hours after refusing to answer questions from Indiana State Police Detective Jerry fucking Doughboy Holman. Let's read that again because it's important. They explained that after Westerman told Baldwin on October 9th what he had done, Baldwin and Rozzi relayed that information to the prosecutor the next day. 2 days later, the prosecutor emailed the defense counsel and the special judge informing them that the individual to whom Westerman allegedly provided the materials, Robert Kyle Fortson, committed suicide hours after refusing to answer questions from an Indiana State Police Detective Jerry Holman, who was allegedly, quote unquote, investigating the leak. The special judge responded to the email by expressing that she was deeply concerned that Mr. Allen's defense is being compromised by all these recent events. She then directed defense counsel to stop working on the case until the judge could discuss the recent developments with the parties during an October 19th hearing. In the meantime, Allen wrote a letter to the judge informing her that he had discussed the leak with Rozzi and the impact it could have on his defense, but that he wanted Baldwin and Rozzi to continue representing him. Counsel for both sides met with the judge in her chambers before the October 19th hearing to discuss the court's expectations for the hearing. During that meeting, the judge informed Baldwin and Rozzi that they had demonstrated gross negligence and incompetence. She conveyed that she had grave concerns about their representation of Allen. In support, the special judge said, the attorneys failed to safeguard confidential case materials, including crime scene photos, emailed confidential work product in the form of a stupid-ass outline that was basically a table of contents. It was pointless, and it was not anything, to an unauthorized person, that being Brandon Woodhouse, and failed to timely report the leak. Made extrajudicial statements about the case. Well, that was a press release that was not extrajudicial, and it was not in violation of a gag order because the gag order came after the press release. And included inaccurate statements in various pleadings. Well, that's according to her own biased opinion. Based on these concerns, the court informed counsel that she had decided to disqualify Baldwin and Rozzi, but she offered to let them save face by withdrawing from the case. Remember, this is the Supreme Court's opinion we're reading. This is the Supreme Court's opinion we are reading. She offered to let them save face by withdrawing from the case so she wouldn't have to go into a public hearing a few minutes later on camera and read a statement she had prepared explaining why she believed counsel was grossly negligent and ineffective. Allen was not present for this discussion, but after briefly speaking with Baldwin and Rozzi, he relayed through them his objection to the court's disqualification. Since the court presented Baldwin and Rozzi with what seemed like a Hobson's choice, this is the Supreme Court. Withdraw or be disqualified in a publicly humiliating fashion, they conveyed they would withdraw over Allen's objection to the court's disqualification decision. The special judge accepted their disqualification or their withdrawals and conducted a brief public hearing without them. And she stated merely that there was a, quote, unexpected turn of events and defense counsel had withdrawn from the case after cracking her knuckles in victory. But after having a few days to reconsider and discuss it further with Mr. Richard Allen, the defense counsel changed their minds, and neither Baldwin nor Rozzi ever filed a written motion to withdraw as required by Trial Rule 3.1H. Instead, Rozzi filed a verified notice of continuing representation, notifying the court that he, in fact, would not be moving to withdraw and would continue representing Allen. And he filed a motion to disqualify Judge Gull on Allen's behalf, arguing that she was biased and should recuse herself. The trial court struck both filings, predictably, and ordered the clerk to remove them from the record because Razi was no longer a counsel of record. Wow, isn't that rich? Isn't that rich? She also appointed 2 new public defenders to represent Allen. Baldwin then filed a motion to reconsider, also informing the court that he would not file a written motion to withdraw. He did not consider his oral withdrawal effective, and he would continue representing Allen. Baldwin and Razi both entered new appearances at Allen's privately retained pro bono counsel. But after a hearing on October 31st, coincidentally, remember, they like to do these things on October 31st. Go search the case. They like October 31st. They like Friday the 13th. These people are Satanists. Okay. The court entered an order stating the special judge previously found gross negligence by Baldwin and Razi in their representation of the defendant. And nothing has changed in the intervening 12 days that removes the court's grave concerns about their representation. So over their strenuous objections, the court disqualified them from representing the defendant and affirmed the appointment of the new public defenders. The court also continued the January 8, 2024 trial date to October 15, 2024. Remember, they like October 15th. They like October. On November 13th, November 6th, 2023, Allen petitioned this Supreme Court for a writ of mandamus by original action and asked us to 1, order the trial court to reinstate Baldwin and Razi, 2, order Allen's trial to begin within 70 days of the writ, and 3, replace the special judge. We heard oral argument on January 18, 2024, and we issued a writ later that day granting Allen's first request but denying his other 2, and I've read all that to you. Okay. Discussion. As we explained below, we agree with Allen that he is entitled to have his original court-appointed attorneys reinstated, but we agree with the state and special judge that Allen is not entitled to a writ ordering a trial to begin within 70 days or replacing the special judge. 1. Allen's request to reinstate his original court-appointed counsel presents extraordinary circumstances warranting relief. Okay. Thank you guys for waiting out for me, holding out for me. I know this is difficult. Really appreciate you all being patient. Allen argues the trial exceeded its authority, the trial court, which means Judge Go. Let's be honest here. Okay. Judge Go exceeded her authority by disqualifying the original court-appointed attorneys, because disqualification was unwarranted and significantly prejudices both his defense and his opportunity for a speedy trial. The state and the special judge respond that this original action is not the proper procedural vehicle to evaluate Allen's claim. And even if it was, the special judge was within her authority to disqualify counsel because she was rightly concerned that they were not fulfilling Allen's constitutional right to effective legal assistance. We agree with Allen. Our court has repeatedly reviewed attorney disqualification issues through original actions, and we do so here because Allen's petition presents the sort of extraordinary circumstances for which there is not an adequate appellate remedy that our original action rules require. Remember this. Remember in Todd Rokita's false, remember I was reading for you that portion where Todd Rokita et al. Falsely claimed that there were appellate remedies that were appropriate. Remember? I told you to listen. Well, oddly enough, dumbass, Indiana Supreme Court says no, there's not an adequate appellate remedy. Okay. A, we may review an attorney disqualification decision through an original action. The court has exclusive original jurisdiction to supervise the exercise of jurisdiction by all Indiana courts. We exercise our supervisory authority through original actions for writs of mandamus or prohibition. Each writ is an extraordinary remedy, equitable in nature and viewed with disfavor. A writ will not be issued unless the relator can show a clear and obvious emergency where the failure of this court to act will result in substantial injustice, which means Judge Gull committed a substantial injustice in removing them. Do you get it? It will also be issued only where the trial court has an absolute duty to refrain from doing this shit, Francis. You got it? One issue our court has repeatedly reviewed through original actions is whether to disqualify counsel. Okay. As in the prior cases, reviewing the trial court's disqualification decision here is appropriate through an original action. That is because this case presents extraordinary circumstances where denying a writ will result in substantial injustice. And Allen's petition is not a substitute for an adequate appellate remedy. We reach that conclusion for a few related reasons. For starters, disqualifying Allen's counsel delayed his trial by at least 9 months. And the fucking trial court has already concluded that Allen's pretrial confinement presents extraordinary challenges. Normally, criminal defendants who must be confined while they await trial are detained in the county jail with other defendants who are awaiting trial or who have been convicted and received shorter sentences. But here, for Allen's safety, quote unquote, the original judge transferred Allen to the DOC Westville, which runs our state's prisons, Westville, facilities that generally detain inmates only after they are convicted and are serving longer sentences for more serious crimes. The special judge later reconsidered the original judge's transfer order, and she too found it reasonable and necessary to ensure the defendant's safety and prevent serious bodily injury. Yeah, not it. Allen is being held currently at Wabash Valley Correctional Facility, which is hours from Carroll County, where the charges were filed, and Allen County, where the special judge serves. Allen's original public defenders are his substitute, and his substitute public defenders have all challenged the conditions of his pretrial confinement, including as they relate to preparing his defense. We are in no position to evaluate claims in those motions, and the special judge has concluded at least one of Baldwin and Razi's claims about the confinement conditions are wrong. But even assuming every aspect of Allen's pretrial confinement is proper, and again, we are in no position to say one way or the other at this point, extending it for at least 9 months still presents extraordinary challenges for which there is no adequate appellate remedy. What's more, as we explained in greater detail below, we've concluded the trial court lacked authority to remove counsel without first, 1, considering other less drastic options, and 2, weighing the prejudice to Allen. So not only would Allen's trial be delayed for at least 9 or many months if his original attorneys were reinstated, if Allen were convicted, correcting the disqualification by vacating his conviction, ordering a second trial, would produce years further delay and an enormous waste of time and resources. That would not serve anyone's interest. Not Allen's, not the state's, not the victims, not the families, the courts, or the public's. Of course, these concerns can generally be resolved through discretionary interlocutory appeals. And both the state and the special judge argue that's the best procedural route. Allen should have pursued instead, but Allen effectively couldn't, which is another reason this matter is extraordinary. On top of disqualifying counsel, the special judge struck their later filings because they were no longer counsel of record, without the ability to file a motion requesting the special judge to certify her order for interlocutory review. Allen's attorneys couldn't pursue that avenue. To that point, the state and the special judge respond that Allen should have had either his new public defenders or the appellate attorneys he retained for his original action pursue an interlocutory appeal instead. But it isn't clear how either option was feasible. The newly appointed trial counsel had nothing to do with the disqualification proceedings, and Allen wasn't present for them. So it's not obvious how Allen could work with his new trial attorneys to pursue an interlocutory appeal in the trial court. Maybe Allen's privately retained appellate attorneys could have done so, but it's unclear whether the trial judge would permit them to represent Allen in the trial court along with his new substitute court-appointed counsel. And it's unclear how it would work if substitute court-appointed trial counsel disagreed with the privately retained appellate counsel about whether to seek certification in the trial court. We simply don't expect Allen to unite that procedural knot, we don't expect Allen to untie that procedural knot, and he can cut through it with his original action instead. Our prior precedents pointed appellate counsel to the original action tool, and we declined to retire that tool for these sorts of situations now. So you understand what I mean? That this appellate tool, this original action tool is the absolute perfect tool for this issue. So I just hope you understand that how good this is in regards to this. Okay. Having concluded that Allen's petition is properly before us, we turn to its merits. Allen is entitled to the reinstatement of his original court-appointed counsel. Court-appointed counsel may be disqualified only after a last resort, or only as a last resort, after considering the prejudice to the defendant. The Sixth Amendment to the Constitution and the 14th Amendment Due Process Clause and Article 1, Section 13 of the Indiana Constitution guarantee criminal defendants the right to an attorney to assist them with their defense. For defendants who can afford to hire an attorney or retain an attorney to represent them for free, that constitutional guarantee includes the right to choose which attorney will represent them. And the erroneous deprivation of this right constitutes structural error, which, unlike other errors, entitles criminal defendants who are convicted to automatic reversal. So you understand what was at play here? Do you understand what was at play? If this had been allowed, this would have been overturned in appeals for structural error. That's what's being said. Which means maybe they should have let it happen. I don't know. Maybe they should have let this shit fly. Structural error, okay, which would have entitled Allen to automatic reversal and a new trial. But the right to counsel of choice does not extend to criminal defendants who can't afford an attorney. Allen can't afford an attorney, and he's asked us to reinstate Baldwin and Rozzi as court-appointed counsel. Consequently, he has no constitutional right to choose which attorneys will represent him. But he didn't choose Baldwin and Rozzi. The trial court did. Allen just wants to continue with the attorneys the trial court chose for him. He's insisting on the continuity of counsel rather than his choice of counsel. Courts around the country are divided over whether the Sixth Amendment guaranteed criminal defendants the continuity of court-appointed counsel. Our court has generally been of the view that the trial court is limited in its authority to remove a criminal defendant's court-appointed counsel. And even courts that have concluded there's no Sixth Amendment right to the continuity of court-appointed counsel have agreed with that much. For example, The Colorado Supreme Court recently held there's no Sixth Amendment right to the continuity of court-appointed counsel. It's still acknowledged. Sorry, I've been reading a lot. That a defendant's interest is in continued representation by a lawyer they have been working with is entitled to great weight if they can demonstrate that prejudice would result from substitution with different court-appointed counsel. The court concluded that interest flows from the due process guarantees in the Fifth and 14th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution rather than the Sixth Amendment's right to counsel. And while the U.S. Supreme Court has not yet addressed whether there's a Sixth Amendment right to the continuity of court-appointed counsel, it too has recognized the rights to due process and counsel overlap. See Strickland v. Washington. Okay. The Colorado Supreme Court also recognized that before disqualifying court-appointed counsel, quote, the court must determine that any remedy short of disqualification would be ineffective, close quotation. In other words, disqualifying court-appointed counsel is a drastic remedy that should only be a last resort. While the state defends the disqualification decision here, it appropriately acknowledges that a trial court's discretion to disqualify court-appointed counsel is significantly limited. The state's brief accurately explains that while, quote, varied interests may necessitate overriding a defendant's preference, disqualification is an extreme remedy that should only be used when a court deems it reasonably necessary to ensure the integrity of the fact-finding process, the fairness or appearance of a fairness of trial, the orderly or efficient administration of justice, or public trust or confidence in the criminal justice system, close quotation. So, whether as a product of a defendant's rights to due process or the right to counsel, the bottom line is that a trial court cannot disqualify court-appointed counsel over the objection of both the defendant and the court-appointed counsel, unless A, disqualification is the absolute last resort, and B, disqualification is necessary to protect the defendant's constitutional rights, to ensure the proceedings are conducted fairly within the professional ethical standards, or to ensure orderly and efficient administration of justice, and C, those interests outweigh the prejudice to the defendant. In the previous original action, we said a trial court is limited in its authority to remove a criminal defendant's court-appointed counsel. But we went on to say it was unnecessary to explicate the parameters of that authority. Disqualification here was not a last resort. The special judge, Fran Gull, concluded Baldwin and Rozzi made 4 mistakes that demonstrated they may be unable to assist Allen with his defense effectively. 1, they failed to secure confidential case materials, including crime scene photos. 2, Baldwin misdirected an email inadvertently with confidential case material to a non-party client without timely reporting the mistake to trial court or prosecutor. 3, Baldwin and Rozzi made extrajudicial statements while the prosecutor motion for a gag order was pending, which the special judge thought might prejudice the case. And 4, statements in Baldwin and Rozzi's motion to reconsider a safekeeping order turned out to be wrong. But the record does not reflect the special judge disqualified counsel only as a last resort after balancing her effective assistance of counsel concerns against the prejudice to Allen that would result from substituting counsel. First, the record does not reflect that disqualifying counsel was a last resort. Each of the special judge's 4 concerns could be addressed through a combination of procedural rules and court orders, including the gag order and protective order she entered. And the trial courts maintain both statutory and inherent authority to compel compliance with their orders and the procedural rules through contempt proceedings and sanctions that include fines and even jail. Okay. Second, the only basis for disqualifying counsel was the special judge's concern that they could not assist Allen with his defense effectively. But there's no suggestion that Baldwin and Rossi are out of their depth. Baldwin has over 30 years of experience representing thousands of clients around the estate, including clients charged with murder, rape, robbery, burglary, and other violent offenses, and he has tried more than 125 jury trials. Rossi has over 20 years of the same experience, including 3 Merck trials and a previous certification to handle death penalty cases. Moreover, neither the state nor the special judge argued that the counsel's extrajudicial statements or the statements in their motion harmed Allen's defense. They don't argue the disclosure of case material undermines Allen's defense. Or they do argue it, but they don't explain how. And they don't argue these mistakes reflect that Baldwin and Rossi are incompetent to handle Allen's defense or explain why disqualification is necessary to protect Allen's right to effective assistance of counsel. Notably, neither the state nor the special judge direct us to any case concluding issues like these, either in isolation or combination, required counsel constitutionally ineffective or were sufficient to warrant disqualification. Third, there's no showing that the special judge's concerns outweighed the substantial prejudice to Rick Allen from substituting counsel Baldwin and Rossi. Okay, they spent a year working with Allen, investigators and experts developing Allen's defense, and Allen says he is ready to present it to a jury. The prejudice to Allen begins with the fact that the information and momentum spillage is inevitable as one trial team hands a complicated case like this over to another. Add to that, Allen has already been in jail for almost a year and a half now. And substituting requires 9 months delay in trial with substitute counsel unsure whether they would even be ready by then. That's not surprising given this is a complicated, high-stakes case. Further, it's already been 7 years since the murders, and fact-finding only gets harder as time passes, memory fades, and evidence is lost. The record does not reveal any weighing of these concerns. Because the record does not reflect disqualification was the absolute last resort that was necessary after balancing the trial court's concerns against the prejudice to Allen, Baldwin and Rossi must be reinstated. Okay? And I'll leave the rest of that. Now, this has been quite a while. Okay, we've gone on quite a while. And actually, as I said, I had 10 to cover. I think I'll leave. I think I'll leave the rest. Actually. It has been a while, and I think that I think that's a good place to stop. My voice is very tired. That was a lot of reading. We can do the others at a future point when we want to discuss them. But basically, I'll inform you as to what the others were. Basically, I was going to add the contempt hearing to this because remember, maybe we can do a part 2 because remember, after this fight with Judge Gold over Baldwin and Rossi with the Supreme Court, that it wasn't over. Remember, these people were not going to let up on Baldwin and Rossi. What happened next? Let me ask you guys in the chat before I even reveal to you. What was the next attempt to remove them? It was the contempt. It was a contempt hearing, remember, in March. So remember, January, February, March. After Supreme Court lays the fucking smackdown like this, within a month, they're back in court over the same fucking subject, trying to have Baldwin and Rozzi arrested for contempt because this didn't work out, and these state actors were butthurt. And you remember this. It's only due to two good-hearted individuals that actually blew up in their faces, because it was revealed that Jody Williams was leaking information to Fig Solves. And when that got said in open court, that put the brakes on that. Don't forget it. But I guess let me do this. On the way out, I'll do this, because this is, I think it's important to show our respects. This is from Richard Allen's verified emergency motion for continuance. Let's read paragraph 6. During the interview with Robert Fortson, he invoked his right to counsel more than a half dozen times. And Jerry Holman acknowledged he had a Fourth Amendment right to counsel, even though that's the wrong amendment, but continued to question him. Holman referenced a guy from Texas, Mark Robert, who we now know as Mark Robert Cohen, and a K. Smith, which was a name counsel had never been made aware of in preparing for contempt proceedings. There's no indication Miss Smith was ever interviewed by Holman. First Sergeant Holman told Mr. Fortson that the judge isn't very happy and he could be charged with contempt of court. He also told him if he didn't give a statement, that would be obstruction of justice and possibly contempt of court. When Mr. Fortson indicated to First Sergeant Holman that he was not comfortable speaking with him until he was able to seek an attorney's consultation, First Sergeant Holman told him if he didn't cooperate and delete whatever he had, that if he called the judge and told her he's not willing to cooperate, I'm going to make a phone call and to see if she wants me to issue that order or not. That's when First Sergeant Holman referenced that Mr. Fortson could be charged with obstruction of justice and contempt. First Sergeant Holman then said, "Let me call the judge real quick and we'll go from there." And he left the room for several minutes. And he returned and told Mr. Fortson that he had talked to the prosecutor, and if he was not willing to turn over any pictures or information, basically there would be consequences. First Sergeant Holman also said that the judge had said if they have photographs to get them and get information about where they got them. First Sergeant Holman then told Mr. Fortson that his lack of cooperation was going to ruin Richard Allen's rights to a fair trial and going to really mess some things up. Then he said, "Doesn't bother me because it's all bullshit in my opinion." First Sergeant Holman also told Mr. Fortson that this is some serious shit, and the judge is adamant that he get the photos out of circulation. Mr. Fortson then confirmed that he didn't have anything like that in his possession and that there was nothing for him to delete. And remember, he asked, what is the phrase? He invoked his rights to counsel, his right to counsel, more than 6 times. So, remember what I said. Frank's memorandum leaks Mr. Fortson. And why is it that people still see in them to leak today. How dare you leak anything? This man had a daughter who was a teenage daughter, a wife. I'd like to thank all of you for being here today, and I hope that you go ahead and pray. This case is a wholly chaotic mess, and it needs to be cleaned up. Everyone needs to straighten up and fly right. And if you wonder why I'm mean, why I'm intolerant of others' bullshit, why I say the same things I say and hold the line, do the things I do, remember one thing: this is real life. This is not a game. This is not entertainment. It's not social media, a drama. This is real life. It's time to straighten up and fly right. And there ain't no mean post in the world that's ever going to bother me. Anyhow, God bless you all. Hug your kids, hug your wives, and do what's right because it's the right thing to do. Like I said, I'm standing by everyone and respecting everyone, which is what I expect you to do. And it's a lot. It's a lot, especially when you don't know what you don't know. But God bless everybody. I'll leave the chat up for 5 more minutes or so that you all can say goodnight to each other. And I'm saying goodnight to you because my voice is shot. That was quite a jaunt through the thicket. So hopefully this has been educational and informative for you, especially for those who had not really understood the gravity of the situation with the Frank's Memorandum, the nexus where the Frank's Memorandum meets the leaks, meets the removing Rossi and Baldwin. Okay, so God bless all of you again. Stay safe. Hope to see you tomorrow night. So with that being said, good night to all.
you.